Hey guys, welcome back to another stream. Um, that was a shit show. Yesterday was, and now this is as well. Not only is it 10 a.m., well, almost 11 now, but I had to wake up at like 10:15. Not only did that suck, sorry, not only does it suck waking up that early, it sucks waking up that early to stream, and then the stream not working. So yesterday I was streaming, and then all of a sudden I saw a light flicker, and I was like, and then the realization hit me. I was like, no, and then but before I could react, it just everything shut down. So that, and it was literally a flicker. Like it wasn't even like that power actually went out. It just flickered. The internet did go out though. The power flickered, and then that shut down my whole PC, and that shut down the whole stream. So then I tried to restart it, didn't work because it kept shutting down over and over again. Which is why I decided to delay to today. But since that happened, I didn't restart my PC. I shut it down, or like it shut down because of the, like just the lights flickering and stuff. But it shut down on its own. I didn't restart it, so I just restarted it, and that seemed to fix these problems. So I think the problems were just residual problems from when I didn't from when it broke the first time. So it's a sign not to finish watching that video. No, we're still gonna finish watching the video. We'll watch Hyperdroid's video soon though. Okay. You and you. Okay, so this one, go back, pause, go back, and then we'll rewind a little bit. Okay, so how you guys doing today? Oh yeah, also my FNaF 4 theory is still coming out today. Even though I'm streaming today, that one is coming out today because I'll be done the stream before that. I'm probably gonna finish this stream around 2-ish, if I had to guess. Maybe 1, depends how long I take to watch all the videos. But so yeah, when this stream is done, wait a couple hours, and then you get to go watch a theory video of mine. What is wrong with my hair today? I hate when it does this. See, after years of dealing with it, you'd think I'd know how to fix my hair. I don't, because it just has a mind of its own. I hate having wavy hair. It sucks. Again, it has a mind of its own. It does not listen to me. There's been times it's literally taken me an entire hour to fix my hair. I'm not joking. Isn't the 2-ish you're talking about in an hour? No. No, it's in 3 hours. It's 11 a.m. Excuse me, it's 11 a.m. for me. I'm saying 2. So, 3 hours. Solution is just to go bald. You know what, man? That might be the strat. As soon as I see a bald spot on my head, it's all gone. Okay. Need to find a new hairstyle? I don't want a new hairstyle. Okay. So. Did I tell you guys about my lower back pain? I think I did. Basically, I'm getting, lower back pain. And so that makes me think I'm getting old, in which case I might get a bald spot pretty soon. So I might be going bald soon. And if I go bald, Let's just hope I can grow a beard by then, because I'm turning into Walter White. That's what's going to happen. Anyway, let's watch the Fred in theory. We've watched 26 minutes and 23 seconds of it, and it's 56 minutes long, so we have about 30 minutes left of this video. So let's get to watching.
Look at to solve that question.
T-Treads.
First,
yeah, this is about where we left off.
Scott has said that he uses the next game to rectify what the community misunderstood about the last one, and by the time of UCN, most of the community thought Midnight Motorist was about the Aftons. So what are we being told in UCN? Well, when you get a certain high score in UCN...
We were a little bit past this, but we'll keep watching from here.
Bear of Vengeance or Toy Chica the high school years. And for this theory, we're going to take a closer look at Toy Chica the high school years. Each intermission is hammering home one idea. Toy Chica is luring children to a place where they end up in her backpack. And she always ends every intermission by saying something could be wrong. We, as a community, took this as Toy Chica being a representation of William Afton. But I'm here to say that she isn't. We are literally being shown Toy Chica, luring children.
We just started, man.
Because Toy Chica literally lured children. In fact,
see, I said this yesterday. Whoops. I said this yesterday, but my problem with that argument is that she's also luring other animatronics, so the fact that they're not literal probably means that she's not literal either. But the thing is that she also lures somebody the same way that Susie does. So, obviously Afton killed Susie, not Toy Chica, right? So even if Toy Chica is meant to kill kids, I don't think that's, like... I don't think this is what that's showing.
Tactics matches up almost identically with Midnight Motorist.
I told him to come over
Yeah, I
later.
do notice that one.
That should be enough. And if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window. Chimney's always an option. Or I could set the house on fire and wait for him to run out. Then he could run into my arms. There is only one thing that could possibly go wrong.
See, my thing about that is that, I talked about this when I was playing Ultimate Custom Night, the whole homework thing. I severely doubt Afton or Toy Chica is going around being like, hey, I need your help with my homework. So I don't think all of these are literal. So I think the window one is more likely just the puppet, and their house is just actually meant to be Freddy's. And because Charlotte dies outside a window. Why is Fred calling Evan bald? Hi, blah.
That's not all, because I can tell you, we're shown something like this again in the FNaF 2 movie. In the FNaF 2 movie, Abby receives a Phaz talker. She talks into it thinking that she could reach out to her friends, specifically Chica. But later in the movie, Abby is lured to the FNaF 2 pizzeria where she sees Toy Chica. I don't know about you, but that seems pretty dead on. But there's one more connection.
I didn't say I might have a bald spot. I said that my hair is annoying, and then somebody told me to go bald. Who said to go bald? Autumn DRB said go bald. And then I said, I will if I get a bald spot. and that I do have lower back pain. So that might mean I'm getting old and might get a bald spot. I didn't say I have one.
You see, on December 2nd, we got the release of an interesting book, The Ultimate Guide 2.0. Overall, this book is chopped, to say the least.
So bad.
It tells
It's
us
so
that
bad.
the Mimic isn't an endoskeleton, and Fiona got a grand total of 1 mention, but nothing is stranger than the inclusion of Chica's Secret Party.
Okay.
Chica's Secret Party is a fake minigame planted into the book that talks about getting several lore reveals, but I think it has 2 very interesting ideas presented. First, we get a screen cap of Toy Chica outside the Midnight Motorist house, literally showing her to be the footprints. In fact, This
Yeah,
vision
but
was
she
so
doesn't
out
really
of
look
nowhere,
like. She doesn't really look. It doesn't really look like the same footprints, to be fair.
not even mentioned in the text blocks describing the game. We are just being shown Toichika outside the Midnight Motorist house with no context.
Well, it does say that Bonnie was seen out in the backyard, so I think that's meant to be like, oh yeah, you can go out and talk to Bonnie or something like that.
That's not all this section has to tell us, because it also recontextualizes a minigame we'll talk about later. It speaks of Toichika giving cupcakes at children's parties to power up her, quote, life force.
That
But there's
seems
something
more
else
William
here to
Afton
ask.
coded, to be fair,
Well,
not
how could it
like a
be
murder bot.
toy with spring locks if it was raining? Well, think back to both of our parallels for the toys. In the Twisted ones, our twisted animatronics have spring locks.
Well, that's not really a good argument. I don't think. I mean, rain doesn't make the spring lock suits just deactivate. It makes them stay in animatronic mode. So it's like if they're in suit mode, it's a problem. But it doesn't stop the animatronic from moving. In fact, it'll probably make it move by itself more, because if it's in suit mode, somebody else is meant to be moving it. If it's not in suit mode, then you're supposed to then the animatronic is supposed to move by itself. So if it's in rain, it walking around is not a problem.
Signed by William.
I'm taking his side on this
Interesting
part,
scene
to be clear.
The Twisteds go into the water and are totally fine. This is even overtly called out by William, where he says, "Do you think my creations would be as poorly designed as your father's?"
Yeah.
So, since in
Which
the
is funny
movies the
because
toys are
Charlie
designed
can
by
shower
William,
and she's one of his
it's highly
robots.
likely that the toys may be waterproof. Okay, so our protagonist isn't William, and our footprints belong to Toichika. Great. But surely there's no direct explanation for this minigame within Pizzeria Simulator.
I still just feel like both Chica's Secret Party and Toy Chica the High School Years just seem much more William Afton coded. Like the Susie thing, that checks out to be William Afton, because it's talking about how William Afton killed Susie. And Chica's Secret Party powering up her life force doesn't really align with a murder bot, and more so aligns with Afton and like Remnant and stuff. So
Right? Well, what if I were to tell you there was a Candy Cadet story hidden under our noses this entire time?
uh-oh.
Let me read it for you and think to yourself if any of it sounds familiar.
Now I will tell you a story about a kind man who would visit 5 orphans and bring them toys and gladness. The man lived alone and in fear that someone might break into the house of one of the 5 children. So he adopted all 5 and brought them together in one place, in his own home. He promised them to never leave them, and they promised to always come home and never stay out too late. He left one day to buy food, his heart being filled with gladness, but returned to find that the burglar had chosen his home and killed all 5 of the children. The man could only afford one coffin, so he stitched the 5 bodies together to make one and buried the child. That night, there was a knock at the door.
It's about time I made Marvel Rivals.
Go away, Marvel Rivals Deadpool. I'm trying to pay attention here.
Well, well, well. Isn't that interesting? Let's see what
So-
the story is fully saying to us. A kind man would visit 5 orphans. Off the bat, we have 5 kids, which could either be the MCI or the DCI, but let's continue. The man would bring them toys. Oh no. He adopted all 5 and brought them to his own home. At his home, the orphans were killed, so he buried their bodies. I'm going to say that this man was none other than William Afton, and these orphans are the DCI. They are literally being brought toys to their homes, like we talked about. But these two connections made everything make sense.
Hold on.
Like,
I thought the story was that
no direct.
I thought the
if it
story was that
sounds
he has them.
Who would visit 5 orphans and bring them toys and gladness. The man lived alone and in fear that someone might break into the house of one of the 5 children.
Oh,
So he
okay.
adopted all 5 and brought them together in one place, in his own
Okay,
home.
I understand.
He promised them to never leave them, and they promised to always come home and never stay out too late.
Well,
Okay.
isn't that in kind of the MCI or brought them to his own home? At his home, the orphans were killed, so he buried their bodies. I'm going to say that this man was none other than William Afton, and these orphans are the DCI. They are literally being brought toys to their homes, like we talked about. But these two connections made everything make sense. The story talks about the man burying the bodies, and we just so happen to get a minigame with a mound outside. One mound for one coffin. But then there's the cliffhanger the story leaves.
Okay.
There was a knock at the door. And what do we audibly hear in Midnight Motorist? This minigame with minimal sound effects. We literally hear a knock at the child's door. Midnight Motorist
Isn't it a knock at the old man's door, though?
is picking up where that Candy Cadet story left off. All this stuff about the children dying takes place, and then there's a knock at the door. Midnight Motorist continues that Candy Cadet story. It's the aftermath of the luring. Story about a kid abused by his drunken father who is preyed upon by William to be lured to the FNaF 2 pizzeria and is murdered as part of the DCI. It all falls into place when you think back to Ralph's line in FNaF 2.
I can personally assure you that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment. It's just all rumor and speculation, people trying to make a buck, you know.
How could you as a company complain that you have nothing to do with an incident and say that the incident is happening out there? Well, maybe because it's literally happening away from the grounds of your building.
Yeah.
The toys are going out and kidnapping people outside of your property grounds.
Yeah, this is kind of what I...
But with all
this is kind of a conclusion that I came to as well. I will say, I mean, like, everything he's saying is kind of aligning with what I have already come up with myself, but I will say I'm not sure the Candy Cadet story is meant to imply that, just because first of all, I do think Midnight Motorist is meant to be the Aftons, and I don't think that Toy Chica being outside the window is meant to be that she's the footprints. I think it's more so just like she is Afton and Orange Guy is Afton, so they're both looking around out there. But I will, but yeah, I think that the Candy Cadet stories are much more like Molten MCI based, in that all of them are about 5 things becoming one thing, and each show like a different element. So like the cats are being stitched together because they're animals, and like the animatronics are animals. That might be a little bit of a stretch, I admit that, but that's like kind of what I got for that one. And then the Keys one, it's all like metal being melted together, which is what Molten MCI is about, and the Orphans is basically saying it's all the dead children being melted together, right? So that's kind of how I interpret that.
Who's our runaway then? Is it just a random child? Well, all the pieces fall together when we re-examine FNaF 3, and I'll hand it back to Fredden to go over that. Subscribe to TD Read!
FNaF 3 has largely been considered solved by the community. I mean, it all seems pretty straightforward. You help the spirits of the MCI move on, and that's really about it. But what if I were to say there were a lot of questions left dangling that we didn't really pick up on? Things we never really talked about until today. Because re-looking at the minigames presented to us, a lot of things start to make a lot of sense. Let's go through them and see what we can find. The first minigame we play is BB's Air Adventure, and here, all we do is collect a balloon. But it's interesting that a FNaF 2 animatronic is...
Yeah, I just realized that
this
too.
Entire quest.
It's Balloon
Mangle's
Boy, Toy
quest is,
Chica,
of
and
course,
Mangle.
a minigame about Mangle, but it's important to note what you are shown. While avoiding a kid running around, you have to collect 5 pieces to Mangle, with the 5th being the endo head, and only after completing Mangle can you go out of bounds. Interesting, as you'll see in later minigames, the main objective is secondary to the glitches, but here you cannot progress without completing Mangle. Once you do, you're outside. It's nighttime. Hell, you even approach the stars and the moon to hammer that into your head, and once you reach the top, you receive a kid.
That's meant to be
You
nighttime?
then
I thought it
go
was just
to
a void.
Chica's party. Remember Chica's secret party, where you then give 4 kids cupcakes? Well, if Chica's secret party is anything to go by, then when Chica gives a kid a cupcake, she's powering up her life force, and that doesn't sound like a good thing for the kid. But as we'll see, we don't need Chica's secret party to learn that the main objective of this minigame isn't a good thing. But breaking the game, we save the next MCI kid. We then move on to the next game, Stage 01, where we play as Fredbear. And honestly, this is the weirdest one, and might be more of a Golden Freddy thing, but it is notable that we see a missing kid in the crowd at one point. Anyways, breaking the game gets us to our
Well, that's
next
meant to be
kid,
this missing kid.
and finally, we have the minigame that makes everything make sense. Shadow Bonnie. Shadow Bonnie is the weirdest inclusion. Why is he here? Why is he helping the MCI? Well, let's take a look at what we're shown in this minigame. Firstly, we cycle through all the minigames, perhaps providing a connection between him and all of them. When we do, we start out normal with BB and BB's air adventure, but here's where we get 2 bombshells, because in Mangle's quest, we see the 5th piece of Mangle, very specific, and then we see Chica's party, a single crying child with only a cupcake separating him from Toy Chica, the final child of the 4, making it 5 children total. I think we are being shown a connection between Shadow Bonnie and the 5th of something, and everything becomes more apparent when we not only look at the very house-like environments of each minigame, but pay attention to Shadow Bonnie's theme song. If you didn't know, Scott Cawthon, when developing the first 4 games, primarily used music and sound effects from different sources, and of course that applies to even the very music boxes you hear playing during each minigame in FNaF 3, and none are most iconic than the one that plays during Shadow Bonnie's minigame, a song by the name of Serenade. And I think what this song is about is mind-blowing. Here are the lyrics to Serenade.
CIBC is a found.
Softly my song plead through the night to you. Down into the silent grove, beloved, come to me. Slender treetops whisper and rustle. In the moonlight, my darling, do not fear that the hostile betrayer will overhear us. Do you not hear the nightingale's call? Ah, they are imploring you. With their sweet, plaintive songs, they are imploring for me. They understand the heart's yearning. They know the pain of love. With their silvery notes, they touch every tender heart. Let your heart too be moved. Beloved, hear me. Trembling, I await you. Come, make me happy. A song about beckoning someone to come to you at night through their window. That is directly what we are shown in Midnight Motorist down to the T. But that must mean one thing, that our runaway is none other than Shadow Bonnie. The happiest day
The
minigames
runaway?
have so many ties back to the DCI because we are being shown that the DCI helped the MCI spirits move on. That's why in Mangle's quest you get the cake to give to the other MCI children. You are literally sharing your cake with them. But there's something I've been leaving out about Mangle's quest. You see, when you first leave the level, the first thing you see isn't the night sky. It's this ominously posed puppet, and by going forward a little bit, you get to an exit. But what does this puppet mean? Well, I think that this puppet is a callback to the minigame Save Them. Think about it. Here we have a visual of a crying puppet right after we collected the pieces of Mangle that happened to line up with the DCI. The puppet is quite literally mourning the souls she couldn't save. And after seeing this, Mangle can just exit. Leave. They're free to move on and not rectify any mistake. But why Mangle? Well, let's take a look back at the Save the minigame to figure out why. Looking back at Save Them, nothing is explicitly too obvious. That is until we get to Kids Cove. Here, we can see Mangle active and about in the restaurant. But out of all of the toys, why is Mangle active? Well, let's look back at
It's
Mangle
possessed by a
first.
dog.
Collect 5 parts with the 5th representing Shadow Bonnie as shown in the minigame. I think that what we are being told is that Mangle is the DCI. For further evidence,
All
let's
of
go
them?
back to our Candy Cadet story in Pizzeria Simulator. The man could only afford 1 coffin, so he stitched the 5 bodies together to make 1, and buried the child. Afton stitched the DCI together through Mangle, and then separately buried the bodies, making the mound. The Mangle is the DCI. I mean, Mangle literally has a line saying,
I am now so many pieces of people, all making me the fox I am today.
but then why are the Wizards awake during this section as well? Well, we'll get to that very soon, but first we need to look at one last thing. Remember how the FNaF 2 newspapers refer to this pizzeria as a vintage pizzeria? Well, they weren't lying. You see, the new FNaF 2 movie had one other trick up its sleeve, and that came at the very beginning of the movie. The movie opens with the death of Charlotte Emily and puts up an extremely weird date, 1982. But I know what you're saying. Well, Charlotte couldn't have died in 1982 because Freddy's is dated back to the explicit year of 1983. And while I completely wouldn't blame you for that line of thinking, I'm going to say that the idea isn't impossible at all. In fact, I'm nearly convinced this may just be the case. Let me explain. You see, the date 1982 didn't come out of nowhere. This date has been relevant to FNaF since before FNaF 4 came out. In the teasers for FNaF 4, when looking at the source code, some interesting dates would prop up. 1983, 1987, and 1982. Now, 1983 is easy to...
Well, I knew this, but I don't know, like, where. I'm currently not seeing any 82s. I know there are 82s, but I don't see any here. Am I blind? I see 8s and 7s. I see more 8s and 7s.
1982. Now, 1983 is easy to explain. It's the date that the game takes place in, and we are shown the bite of 83. 87 gets a little tricky, but the game has several explicit callbacks to FNaF 2. In fact, these callbacks are so important, Scott called one of them out as being integral to solving the game. But 1982? That just seemingly came out of nowhere. It doesn't make sense. At least it didn't until at the end of the year when Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes released. You see, in the book series, Charlotte Emily was killed in 1982 by the hands of William Afton, but by the fourth closet, it was retconned to 1983. But we still have that 82 date, and now it's been connected.
I never really thought it was retconned. I always kind of just thought it was like that she was kidnapped in 82 and then pronounced dead in 1983.
Twice with the death of Charlotte Emily. But looking at the puppet and its connections, it's very obviously connected to the toy animatronics. Hell, design alone, it looks like a toy. But how could we say Charlotte died in 1982 if the toys didn't exist until 1987? Well, I'm here to say they've existed for a while. First of all, let's look at what FNaF 2 tells us about the location we're in. The newspaper tells us we are in a vintage pizzeria given new life. And
I assume he's just going to say that like FNaF 2 was the first Freddy's and that it was reopened and this location was reopening.
Phone call says that we should forget any negative connotations we would have from the old location and that it was left to rot for quite a while, implying that at some point the location stopped rotting. That's really all we hear about this location, and I hope you can see how both of these things could apply to Charlotte's death, but FNaF 2 isn't all of the information we get about the toys. You see, by the time of FNaF 3, we see drawings of the toy animatronics we don't see in the FNaF 2 pizzeria during our shift, and going into FNaF 4, everything becomes clearer. In FNaF 4, we directly see not only the base toy animatronics existing as toys, Toy Chica even missing her beak, but we also see Mangle. Now, for all intents and purposes, the existence of Mangle in 1983 as even just a toy should be impossible. It has the two heads and everything. Yeah. So you have two paths. Loop victim, go watch FNAFology's video on that, or that Mangle had to have existed by at least 1983, which would line up with what we're told in the survival logbook. The survival logbook is filled with faded text with a character presumably talking to the crying child. But that line of thinking raises a question when you get to two specific messages. Was your favorite ride the carousel, and do any of these toys look familiar to you? Let's start with the carousel comment. Bite victim would have to have been to a location that had a carousel, and the only location that we've ever been shown to have one was the FNaF 2 pizzeria. This could recontextualize the line, do any of these toys look familiar to you? Because they're not talking about actual toys, they are talking about the toys, toy animatronics. Think about it. The question before already asked him about his purple telephone, and the one drawn here looks nothing like it. Almost as if none of these toys line up.
Yeah, but I think it's just meant to be that it's a toy phone.
Familiar with these toys. He's familiar with the toys. So we can say that the toy characters existed by at least 19.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a stretch.
But what if I were to tell you that we can date them back to at
a great workout? And it all starts in the kitchen.
Least 1973.
Oh,
That's
God.
Right. And it all spawns
That's a long time.
From Help Wanted 2. In Help Wanted 2,
the carousel,
you can
yeah.
play the carousel level, where you have to face off against the moon in this Fall Fest attraction. Taking a look around, your surroundings match up to the Curse of Dreadbear Fall Fest area. But that's not all, because on this carousel are Fazbear characters. While most look like the classic gang, look at these. The exact toy designs, even having Funtime Foxy. And taking a look at the bottom of the carousel is sun imagery. And as we know from Secret of the Mimic, the sun equals Fiona, meaning this is the Fall Fest Fiona died at, meaning the toy characters have existed since at least 1973. I mean, the Fall Fest fire even
Is
starts
that when
on
Fiona
the
died?
Fazer Blast. So we have
I don't
come
remember.
to the conclusion
I think David
that
died in
toys have
75 and
existed
she died
since
a couple years
73.
before.
But how can we
Yeah.
explain
72 or
coin
3.
dated to 1983? And most importantly,
Just franchised,
Hope
yeah.
wanted to use references to Charlotte's death date, and there's explanations for all three, but you're not gonna like it. First of all, the coin. And that's where we bring up a real-life example brought up
McDonald's.
by O2K on Twitter.
Yeah.
In the 1940s, the original McDonald's was opened. However, fast forward to 1955, and the first franchise location was opened. But looking at McDonald's logo, they state since 1955, referring to the franchise location, meaning that this coin's 1983 could be referring to the first franchised Freddy's location and not the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Now for Charlotte's death date. In Help Wanted 2, we are given two contradictory pieces of information. In order to receive Charlotte's memory doll, you need to punch in the code 1983 into a pin pad in the sister location private room during a level called Puppet Master. So that would confirm that Charlotte has a connection to the date 1983, right? Well, not exactly. You see, it's equally likely that this is a reference to the 83 code in the original private.
I don't think
just
so.
Given new
because
life.
this is very puppet coded, right? I feel like it's weird that it would not have anything to do with the puppet. If the if you get the puppet plushie from it, and it's literally called, and the minigame is called Puppet Master. I feel like it's weird for that not to have anything to do with the puppet, if that's the case.
To give you a memory doll. I mean, if you're gonna recreate the private room, you have to include the pin pad, right? Not to mention that the other ways of getting memory dolls don't really have anything to do with the death of the characters. To get Jeremy,
yeah, but their levels are also not named after the character.
Jeremy on the
so.
head with an oversized mallet, right? So if the 1983 code
I mean, I
doesn't
guess
have anything to do
Bonka
with
Bon
Charlotte,
kind of
then
is,
the
but
gravestone
not
order
really.
must be telling us Charlotte's last, right?
What about Charlie 87?
Shut up, Shizu. While on the surface it does look like that, I think it's more likely this order means nothing. It's simply just a puzzle put in to be a reference to the gravestone puzzle in the other Princess Quest game. So
I mean, yeah, it's
both
the
of
same
these
puzzle,
pieces
too.
of evidence are pretty void. When you
Like,
get
the graves
two
are the same.
contradictory pieces of evidence in a game, they contradict each other and kind of just blip out of existence. So, with all of that being said, Charlotte dying at the original Freddy's that was more based off of the original toy location is more possible. In fact, it seems the games are screaming that the toys are more important than we gave them credit for. But if that's the case, then what's our overall theorized story look like? Well, let's see. Back in the 70s, Fazbear, or Fiona, based on the alternate Fazbear and puppet designs on Edwin's computer, come up with the designs of the toys and the Endo O2s. They
not
open
sure
up a
about
restaurant
that.
by 77, and business does well.
I also kind of have a problem with the Endo O2s existing first. Because they're called Endo O2s, not, and like Endo O1s you'd think would be first. Yeah. Anyway.
MCM continue to work on their Fazbear project, and William even offers MCM employees potential franchising endeavors in the new decade. The restaurant uses a toy spring lock system, and William may already be experimenting with the ideas of killbots. It's also notable to mention that Funtime Foxy gets mangled at this location and is later reused for the 87 one. Come 1982, he dives completely into his alchemist fantasy and kills Charlotte Emily outside of the original Freddy's. With no adults to lift her into their arms when she was trapped outside, she is reborn in the puppet with a purpose: to protect the innocent and to hold a grudge against adults in general. The death of Charlotte gives the 82 location a bad reputation and closes it down by the end of the year. It's entirely possible that the bite victim saw something at this Freddy's as well, being told, "Don't you remember what you saw? Was your favorite ride the carousel?" Maybe he saw the death of Charlotte leading to his fear being capitalized on by his father. In the meantime, Afton is inspired. He creates the Funtime animatronics based on the toys from the original Freddy's, making them Toy 2.0s. He even remakes the character of Funtime Foxy. He dives fully into making them kidnapping robots. He even keeps around the Toys 1.0 as an out-of-service spring lock suit in the bunker. However, his daughter Elizabeth gets too close to Baby, and her kidnapping claw actually ends up killing her, with her possessing Baby. William learns about this, and it gives him a twisted idea. He puts all of his current projects into a directory, giving each codenames. He decides to codename the original Freddy's Chica's Party World, due to their use of Toy Chica and her "Let's Party" catchphrase, referencing the original Chica's Party World.
I think that's just like its own restaurant.
Next project.
I think Chica's Party World is just like the Chica's Party World. Like I think obviously it closes down, but at this point in the timeline there is, or like at the point of the timeline of Sister Location, there is no Chica in the location, and there is a Funtime Chica. So I think that Chica's Party World just opens up after after FNaF 1 location closes down,
which is codenamed as Criminal Institute. He creates the Toy 3.0 animatronics and gives the original Freddy's a new modern design to help trap children and make it easier for the killbots to do their work. He even recreates Egg Baby as Balloon Boy, an animatronic that creates as much noise as possible and masks it as children's laughter in order to silence suspicions. The first thing the toys do is be sent out by William to kidnap and kill children using their twisted spring-lock tech. They drag them into the Freddy's location while it's raining outside, which is no matter because they're waterproof. One of their kidnappees is a poor abused boy who was let out of his house by Toy Chica. He's killed by Toy Bonnie, creating the form of Shadow Bonnie. All of this leads to rumors of things happening outside the restaurant that are somehow still tied to it. Afton puts the remnant of the DCI into Mangle, leading to it being alive the day they're killed. He then buries the bodies outside, but there was one thing that went wrong. Charlotte. Charlotte takes control of his murder bots, and using Withered Freddy, she scares Afton into the day shift. Afton complains about the puppet, so the music box is put into place. However, she still has a hold of the toys, influencing them to come after the new night guard, Jeremy, and she also influences them to go against adults to a point where you can...
I don't think that the puppet has anything to do with the toys in the games. Like, I don't think she controls them like in the movies, because in the movies, when you wind up the music box, and like when she hears the music box, she gets disabled, and then the toys don't. Sorry, and then the toys do too. But in the games, you wind up the music box, the puppet stays at bay, but the toys don't. So it's like her control over them would be severed if she did control them in the games, but that's not the case. So
can't even make.
I will also say I don't understand how you combine this with Midnight Motorist, because if you're saying Charlotte died in 1982, but the grave is the DCI, then you have them dying in 87, I think he's still saying, right? He's still saying 87, I think, for Save Them. But Charlotte died in 82, and then Midnight Motorist is later that night after FNaF, after Midnight Motorist. So how does that work, unless you're just not using that? I don't know.
With them. This even leads to a conflict in Mangle. Possessed by the DCI and controlled by the puppet, when he gets into your office, she can't decide whether to kill you or to spare you. Afton, at some point during his day shift, uses his old yellow rabbit suit to go undetected by the robots, much like how the Fazbear mask works for Jeremy. He alters them to go back onto their Killbot programming, but unfortunately Jeremy is bitten, and with the restaurant already on its way out, the toys are scrapped. The souls of the DCI still stick around, although they can move on at any time. Decades later, they decide to help out the souls of the MCI, and together they all move on. The rest of the series goes on with subtle influences. The glam rocks, much like the toys, might be made for an equally nefarious purpose, masked under friendly features, and much like the toys, they might have some Afton influence as well. Shadow Bonnie is implied to still be around, possibly as a restless spirit of the DCI. But for now, that's where we're at. What do you guys think of this theory? It was a lot of fun to make, and I think a lot of things from it have a lot of good evidence for them being the case. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay. I think there's a lot of stuff here that is definitely interesting. I don't really agree with a lot of it, but okay, I agree with a decent amount of it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that he uses evidence that I don't think is really evidence, and I think there's some things that I definitely do disagree with. Later that night is not confirmed to be referring to the night Charlotte was killed. For all we know, it could just be later that night of Midnight Motorist. Well, the problem is that it's called Later That Night, and you're driving a purple car, and it's raining, and in, when Charlotte died, Afton is driving a purple car, and it's raining, so it's like, I severely doubt that it's not later that night after Charlotte died. But yeah, I feel like saying Shadow Bonnie is a spirit at all is questionable. Saying it's a spirit of the DCI is weird. Not saying it's impossible, just I don't really see that. But overall, it's an interesting theory. I don't really agree with a lot of it, but I think it's definitely interesting, and it's pretty well put together too. So it wasn't bad, not at all. Sorry, wrong button. Okay, so we watched that one. Now it's time to watch Hyperdroids. This is I Solved FNaF 1, All FNaF Lore Explained Part 1. This is a 40-minute long video, and it's all about FNaF 1. Okay, let's watch.
After an entire decade of Five Nights at Freddy's, there's a lot of lore to unpack that millions of theorists have tried to solve. Although
Millions?
I
That's a
think
lot.
I've actually solved it all. Today is the first part of this mini-series where we're solving the very first Five Nights at Freddy's game from back in 2014, including the biggest question: what year does it take place? Each month will be dedicated to a single game until the big timeline video releasing December 19th at 5 PM UTC. So please subscribe so you don't miss an upload, and for us to hit 300k before the end of the year, like the video and consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy. But in order to figure out which story I'm going to tell there, let's begin solving the timeline here. Although remember, as always, this is just a theory, and my interpretation of the evidence. Even if you disagree, I hope it gives you something new to think about. Since there weren't any planned sequels at the time, the lore of the first game is relatively straightforward, so I'll be using information taken from later games to further expand on all the lore we first learned about within this game.
Yep.
So as we all know, we play as a security guard named Mike Schmidt, who we later learn is really Michael Afton, taking a job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to monitor the location for the week, and protect himself against the main four animatronics: Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny Rabbit, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox, as well as the ghostly fifth animatronic, Golden Freddy. This game and all the other future games take place within the distant town of Hurricane, Utah, and we know this due to the novel trilogy, which, as a side note, this trilogy, the Fazbear Fright series, and the Tales from the Pizzaplex series are all in different timelines to the games, but are stated by creator Scott Cawthon to be reimaginings of the story, while still sharing many familiar elements to the games, to basically help us with the lore. So don't take the books as one-to-one, but instead as clues, hints, and a general baseline for the lore. The first book, The Silver Eyes, explicitly locates the story of FNaF in that very town of Hurricane, at the very beginning, but we know that it carries over to the games too due to the lawsuits you can occasionally get throughout the later game FNaF 6, directly stating, in the District Court of Utah, 5th Judicial District, Washington County. Not only that, but in an even later game, Security Breach, we specifically hear of an attraction called the Hurricane.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
This bucket explicitly showing it visually, further cementing this idea. Then in an even later game, Into the Pit, we see outside of the main protagonist's school what appears to be a flag for Utah to further bring it all together. If you're somehow still not convinced, we read in one of the unused emails in the discontinued FNaF AR game, Special Delivery, quote, despite the name, hurricanes are actually not the leading cause of death of children in Hurricane, Utah. Although moving on from location, we'll talk more about Mike, the phone guy, and the timeline of FNaF 1 itself later, because for now we learn the main lore of this game through the newspapers that randomly appear as a hallucination in the east wall corner. We read that 5 children were lured into the back room during their birthday party at an older Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which opened up in 1983, confirmed through Help Wanted's Fazcoin, the random cookbook funnily enough, as well as the new Ticket to Fun book read.
Hold on, what does that cookbook say?
The random
the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was opened back in 1983. Oh, that's problematic. I didn't know it said the first Freddy Fazbear's. I haven't read the cookbook. I don't have it. So it doesn't even say the franchise location or, huh? It says the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, huh? That might be a little problematic to the other theory, but who knows?
Cookbook funnily.
Maybe the writers were misinformed. I don't know.
Reiterating that fact. Eventually, those children were killed, and their dead bodies were put inside the animatronic suits at night, shown with Into the Pit changing from day to night once the kids are killed, and the animatronics begin malfunctioning, as well as Pizza Party showing Freddy being stuck when no one else is in the building at the time, aka at night, leading the children to become missing. Alas, the Missing Children's Incident, MCI for short. That's not all we know about this event though, as we know through the newspapers that this event occurs on the 26th of June, but we later learn it occurs specifically in the year 1985. 2 years after the location first opens, due to the first FNaF book, The Silver Eyes, directly stating that the children went missing 10 years before the story takes place, which is in the year 1995, as well as all the adaptations of Into the Pit, a story where the protagonist explicitly travels back to the memory of the MCI itself, reinforcing that 1985 date, even the game version. And to push it even further, it's even told to us outside of the franchise itself, with the official Dead by Daylight collab, containing a logo for a Freddy's from 1985, which, if you aren't aware,
I didn't know
Dead
that.
by Daylight realms are created based on the memories of the Taken. Usually in FNaF we don't get much confirmed, so to have the 1985 date repeated to us at least 5 times, as well as an extra 6th if you include outside media, it seems pretty solidified. Speaking of the first ever Freddy's location though, we can actually infer that it's the same building that ends up becoming the FNaF 1 Freddy's.
Yep.
We know this due to not only the newspapers about the MCI appearing in this building, the closure of the FNaF 1 location stating that the MCI took place there many years ago, implying it's the same building, but there's also the fact that FNaF 3 tells us that they discontinued use of the hidden safe rooms after the MCI occurred in 1985. Yet we actually see in the later Follow Me minigames from FNaF 3 that the FNaF 1 building actually has a safe room, meaning that it's an older location being reused. This makes sense given that Follow Me is basically a recreation of the MCI, luring the kids to the back room for Afton to take their life away. Funnily enough, Henry's insanity speech in FNaF 6 directly tells us that this is the case as well, by stating that
he lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks. He set some kind of trap. I don't know what it was, but he led them there. Again. He overpowered them. Again. And he robbed them of the only thing that they had. Again.
Confirming that the safe room in the FNaF 1 Freddy's, where they get lured to and destroyed in Follow Me, was the exact same place they were lured to and killed originally in 1985. And to further that, not only do they later find Springtrap in the safe room, but they also find vintage audio tapes from the phone guy, specifically training the employees of not the FNaF 1 Freddy's, but the 1985 Freddy's instead, which it would make perfect sense for those old tapes to still be there if they were simply being kept in
You know
this
what? I just realized I should use this for the first Freddy's rather than the other one.
Which it would make perfect sense for those old tapes to still be
because like
there.
it just makes a little bit more sense. I don't know why I've never done that. I don't even have this image saved on my computer. I need to get that.
85 Freddy's instead,
I'll do that later.
which it would make perfect sense for those old tapes to still be there if they were simply being kept in the same building. Although not only is the building the same, but so are the designs of the animatronics. In the interactive novel The Week Before, which explicitly takes place
this is what I want to see.
The phone guy himself specifically thinks, quote, the brown bear is dapper as always in his black top hat and bow tie. You're glad they restored the vintage animatronic with his classic look, meaning that his FNaF 1 design is the same restored classic design from the first location. This also makes sense with the fact that Help Wanted with
I will say, I talked about that in my video. Technically, that doesn't have to mean that because of Toy Freddy, and he doesn't look the same, but I will say I'm getting more open to that idea, but I want to see what else he says.
Pizza Party, which is a direct recreation of the MCI, Into the Pit, not only with the animatronics themselves, but also through the scrapbook, cutouts, and more, and Secret of the Mimic, with the prototypes underground, directly show us that the first ever 1985 Freddy's used the same designs of the classics from FNaF 1. Speaking of Into the Pit, we're even shown the arcades with the animatronic faces on them in the 1985 Freddy's. That's a specific pull from FNaF 3 with its arcade machines in the main gameplay, that also just happen to have the designs of the classics on them as well, to further push this main idea. Dead by Daylight also reiterating it all with the classic designs in the 85 location. That's not all the evidence for that though, as within FNaF 2 we see not only the classic designs being used for plushies that seemingly came from the original Freddy's, but we also see dream cutscenes that take place at that older Freddy's, showcasing the classic designs as well as the same dining area from FNaF 1. This exact framing being referenced with the Help Wanted and Secret of the Mimic endings, both using the classic designs for the originals, further connecting both the 1985 designs and location to the FNaF 1 designs and location. The FNaF movie even has the Freddy's where the MCI are killed be the exact same one as the one that Mike works at later in the timeline, even with fixed versions of the animatronics such as Foxy. If all of that is not enough, Not only is Ultimate Custom Night's map the FNaF 1 map, implying this location is based off the memory of where the one you should not have killed died, likely from the MCI, but Secret of the Mimic's prototype Freddy's is literally just the FNaF 1 map as well to further this idea. And the first help also gives us the cherry on top, with a Faz coin for the first ever Freddy's featuring the face of a FNaF 1 designed Freddy. The whole theory then finally...
That, I will say, the coin I don't think is really that good of evidence considering it says since 83, meaning it wasn't made... meaning the coin was made after 83, so I don't think that matters. But I will say the other stuff is pretty good.
With the FNaF 1 animatronics all using Endo 01s, despite us seeing these in gameplay after the Endo 02s were used in 87. All in all, meaning the FNaF 1 Freddy's is literally just a redone 1985 Freddy's, with the same designs and in the same building due to the company's lack of money by this point in time.
I do wonder if he's going to talk about the wizards, though.
Either way, we of course later know that the murderer was a man named William Afton, the name taken from the novels at first, but later reiterated in FNaF 6's credits, who is represented in these games as the purple guy, representing him moving in the shadows, as confirmed by Scott, and who was wearing a yellow rabbit costume, Spring Bonnie, to commit these murders using a pizza knife, as confirmed in Dead by Daylight. We learn in the future installments that Spring Bonnie and his stage partner Fredbear, who later becomes who we call in this game Golden Freddy, came from a previous establishment, Fredbear's Family Diner, and the two were what's called Springlock suits. If you're new to the franchise, these Springlock suits had the average animatronic performance mode, but they also had an additional suit mode where employees could simply insert and firmly turn a hand crank to eventually fasten all the Springlocks into place, in order to make enough room for employees to actually enter the costume and entertain within. Although the Springlocks don't react too well to water and moisture, so if you're inside one and someone spills their water on you, let's just say it'll be a long day for you. Not only that, but these Springlock suits had the ability to free roam the building during the day when in animatronic mode, walking to
where the children are for maximum entertainment / crowd pleasing value.
Although FNaF 2 mentions how the toy animatronics could also free roam, so could the classics? Well, within FNaF 3, we also learned that the safe rooms were hidden from all of the animatronics' digital map layouts, which we then see undeniably includes the classics within the Follow Me minigames, where none of them are able to roam into the safe room. This in itself directly implies that the classics could free roam. Otherwise, why would the classics even need a digital map layout within their programming that the company then has to literally hide a room from so that they don't enter it if they were just never programmed to move off stage anyways? The later game Into the Pit further reiterates this, giving us a scrapbook all about the classics from 85 that Oswald is currently dealing with, featuring technicians noting that the classics could move off stage, with quotes such as, "Chica will bring stolen food to the pile and eat it," and AI programming causing Freddy to stalk partygoers by guarding doors. But the cherry on top is a rare death minigame seen in FNaF 2, Foxy Go Go Go. Within, we directly see that Foxy can come out of Pirate's Cove and is clearly able to move around while the kids are partying in the original Freddy's location, as the minigame takes place around the MCI. Although, do you notice any underlying pattern with that specific mechanic? Think about it for a second. Foxy is directly heading from where he set idle, towards the sound of children partying for higher entertainment value. Does that wording help ring any bells?
The animatronics are set to turn and walk towards sound cues. This is an easy and hands-free approach to making sure the animatronics stay where the children are for maximum entertainment / crowd pleasing value.
That's right. It seems that this minigame shows to us that the classics had the exact same programming as the Springlocks had, while in animatronic mode, just without the ability to be turned into a wearable suit, of course. Phone Guy even hints at this within FNaF 2, stating,
"The robots were never given a proper night mode, so when it gets quiet, they think they're in the wrong room. So then they go try to find where the people are."
Which perfectly mirrors this exact same go to where the children are directive, which we're theorizing all of these animatronics have. This idea works pretty well, especially because the classics not being able to free roam makes no sense, considering the variations before, during, and after them were able to. So with the classics having map layouts, a room being blocked from them, mentions of their free roam movements in the past, as well as Foxy Go 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 directly showing us the mechanic in action, it seems that the classics could indeed free roam during the day, just like the toys could later do better, but both using the same directive from the original Springlock animatronics. animatronics. But besides the mechanics of the suit he was wearing, and before getting into the main 5 children we all know by this point, we learn through the newest in-universe book, Ticket to Fun, that an 8-year-old named Timmy Douglas was actually a failed MCI victim. Quote, "The games at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza are the best. Bonnie even helped me win one time. He wanted me to go into a dark closet for a special prize, but I had to go open presents." Which in itself tells us that the children William killed were not targeted or specifically planned in any way, like some believe. They were just
like FNaF,
random kids,
the FNaF
and
2
the same
movie.
book also further proves that the classic designs were used in the old location too, as shown most clearly with the fixed Foxy being the design of Classic Foxy, and Classic Freddy shown on the page about the origins of Fazbear Entertainment, as well as the whole book featuring stuff from all the Freddy's locations, yet never showing any other designs but the classics. Moving on though, and we later learn more information on the main 5 children that William successfully lured and murdered.
Tonight, you've got the all... Perhaps...
Starting with their names, which we learnt due to the gravestones at the end of FNAF 6 containing said names, and then cross-referencing those names with the heads shown off in the bad ending of FNAF 3, in order to get the corresponding possessors. This method was just a theory for a while, but did actually get confirmed, through both the Fazbear Fright story Coming Home, and the week before, both having Susie possessing Chica, the week before also having Jeremy possessing Bonnie, as well as surprisingly Dead by Daylight with the Freddy hat add-on directly stating Gabriel trusted the wrong grown-up. Now he's the star of the show. Which these add-ons also horrifically implied that the MCI were begging for their lives, with a party hat add-on stating the party never ends, no matter how much they beg. These party hats also connecting to Into the Pit, showing us the MCI were wearing said party hats when they got murdered. While we could then infer that Fritz was Foxy, the name behind the Golden Freddy spirit was a little harder to figure out, as it was covered by grass in that final image, and so we needed to use the survival logbook in order to figure out the name, which coincidentally had a gravestone with my name covering it. As you probably know by now, there were numbers throughout this logbook that were either misplaced or noted as important, which ended up being used as coordinates in a word search to get the name Cassidy. The final novel, The Fourth Closet, then featured an MCI child named Cassidy, and Scott later talked about how a Cassidy screenplay draft for the FNAF movie was the most accurate screenplay, both seemingly confirming the name Cassidy is indeed canon, although naming aside, and we can actually figure out the exact order these 5 were lured and murdered, mainly due to the later game Ultimate Custom Night having Susie directly tell us, "I was the first. I have seen everything," meaning she was the first killed in the group, double confirmed with Susie's death minigame containing a song titled 4 Bits to the Left, which starting at the 5th and final kill and then going 4 down would of course lead you to the first. Then we can use a combination of both the birthday balloons in Security Breach, as well as the pizza party level in Help Haunted to actually get the rest of the order. The 1 being blank because we already know the first is Susie for Chica, the purple 2 signifying Jeremy dying second for Bonnie, the blank 3 signifying we should already know who the third is, which then perfectly correlates to pizza party showing us Gabriel being stuffed into Freddy, while both Chica and Bonnie are already stuffed, while Foxy's still available, the red 4 then signifying Fritz dying fourth for Foxy, and then finally the golden 5 signifying Cassidy dying last for Golden Freddy. While people may disagree because of Help Haunted 2's gravestones, I should note now that I don't think those graves are actually telling us the death order, so I'm not going to be using them here to figure out said order, and I'll explain why it's not showing us the order properly in the Help Haunted 2 video itself. But either way, not only can we get the exact order, but we can also figure out some more information on each and every MCI victim. Starting with the first, Susie, and we learn through FNAF 6's Fruity Maze minigame that her dog has been missing, although we then learn it got run over one day as showcased in that very minigame. We can infer due to the imagery of Spring Bunny digging something, as well as another minigame in that same game featuring William driving past a random mound, that William was the one who ran over the dog, explaining how he somehow knows about her dog's death and uses it against her despite this assumedly being their first time meeting. Some have often theorized that the dog ends up possessing Mr. Cupcake, and I actually think that instead of the dog itself directly possessing it, Mr. Cupcake is still possessed by Susie, but specifically by her memories and the agony of her dog and its death. This explains why in certain installments like FNaF 4, Help Wanted, or the movie, it often acts as a seemingly separate entity while still being a part of Chica. Although finally we also learn within Coming Home that Susie's mother is a woman named Patricia, and she also has a sister named Samantha. Then we move to Jeremy, and unfortunately we don't have much on him. And he doesn't even exist in the novel trilogy. Although in Security Breach, the comedy bot down in the Fazbear Theatre tells a rather interesting story. Quote,
"Aren't parents the worst? Any of you kids have parents. Don't you hate it when your parents take you somewhere fun and abandon you? They're all like, I guess if I dump little Jeremy off at his favorite pizzeria before I move to Aruba, that makes me a good parent."
Which possibly implies that Jeremy was abandoned at Freddy's by his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
yeah, I've had that.
Judging by the story, causing Jeremy to like.
I've had that idea for a while too. Back when I made my
we can then move straight.
Back when I made my missing short story video, I actually incorporated that into it too.
To Gabriel, who we can actually infer was a birthday host and everything, which, speaking of, my audience has decided that the cake flavor he picks is chocolate, so that's why I'll say that in my final timeline. But it can also be inferred from unlocking his spirit for Happiest Day only after completing the Balloon Boys Air Adventure minigame, which is of course filled with balloons, birthday balloons. And it would also make sense with him being the star of the show and getting the main role, which actually seems to make the other animatronics give him a higher importance, and possibly even be scared of him as shown off in the week before. Quote, "Freddy is missing from the stage, but Bonnie and Chica are back there already. Even Foxy is still hiding out in Pirate's Cove. This night has been feeling off, and you reason it's because it's the first night Freddy has gone wandering. It's possible that the other animatronics are lying low tonight to give him some room to explore. They're not afraid of him, are they? As well as FNaF 1 having him be the one shown when in the same camera as somebody else, and being the one to jump scare you when the power goes out, even if the others are already inside. Either way, we then move on to Fritz, who we don't know too much about, although the minigame completed to unlock his spirit is the Stage 01 minigame, where kids are distracted by watching a performance as one is eventually taken, which coincidentally correlates to how Spring Bonnie lures away an MCI child in the FNaF movie intro. The animatronic they're watching also just happens to be Foxy too, and this is also similar to the novel trilogy where a kid named Michael Brooks is also lured away while the other kids are watching a performance. Either way, we then have the final kid, Cassidy.
Your spending changes.
Okay. I need to note down all the evidence that he gave for the classics being the first animatronics. Because like I said, I'm making like a follow-up to my Wizards video, so I want to bring that up too. Oops.
The kids are watching a performance. Either way, we then have the final kid, Cassidy, who we can actually infer was killed most brutally and likely due to the springlocks within Golden Freddy, who we later learn was a springlock suit in both the Fazbear Fright story The New Kid, as well as Ultimate Custom Night connecting Golden Freddy and Fredbear as one and the same, and then Into the Pit reiterating this fact. Cassidy dying by springlocks is also actually hinted at with Ultimate Custom Night, directly showing us Golden Freddy twitching away into the darkness, exactly like William was twitching within Springtrap in the trailer for FNaF 3, as well as that same game featuring an analogy of the MCI, which shows the methods getting progressively more violent as they went on, leaving the final to be the worst. Not only that, but the story I mentioned, The New Kid, also has kids being put into and dying inside the Golden Freddy suit due to the springlocks, which if the Fazbear Fright series is meant to fill in blanks in the original story, then Cassidy dying by springlocks would be what we can infer from that story.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think it's interesting because Afton, it gets springlocked, but he seems to stay alive. So if Cassidy is vengeful, it makes sense that if she was killed by springlocks, then she would keep him alive during his springlock failure so that his pain never ends. I think that's really, like, kind of poetic in a way, and I think that makes sense.
Most likely a girl, due to multiple sources. First of all, the laugh paired with specifically Golden Freddy is that of a little girl as heard here. This laugh is then slowed down to make it sound deeper and more so like a boy laughter for regular Freddy.
Yep.
Which makes sense considering Gabriel, his possessor, is a boy. Then the novel trilogy has a black-haired MCI victim named Cassidy be, well, a girl, which the logbook then just happens to contain a girl being given cake by the puppet, with a happiest day phrasing above it. The imagery clearly referencing the Golden Freddy kid being given cake in that very minigame. Which, speaking of, in Return to the Pit where we see the MCI, a girl with curly hair just happens to be the one who gets her cake last.
Well, I don't think that
makes sense considering Cassidy's name
but...
actually is derived from an Irish surname meaning curly haired, but can actually be cross-referenced with the new kid where they look inside the Golden Freddy suit, only to find someone's body with curly hair inside. Hair that just happens to be black just like Cassidy's in the novel trilogy and assumedly the logbook. All in all, it seems that Cassidy is indeed a girl, although to be completely fair, we'll see if this conversation changes the other direction if the Golden Freddy boy in the movie gets called Cassidy, but for now I'll be going with Cassidy being a girl. Either way, there's of course more to Golden Freddy itself, but we'll talk more about that in FNaF 4 when the crying child comes into the story and likely becomes a second spirit within it, and that's everything we can gather about the MCI. Well, besides the fact that within FNaF 1 itself, the lore surrounding the MCI actually contains Scott's infamous one confirmed retcon that people have been theorizing about for years, which is where it states that a suspect was convicted for the murders. Although, as you probably know, this does not make sense with what we know now in modern day, as in every single game past FNaF 1. We mainly know this isn't the case thanks to Help Wanted stating that nothing related to Fazbear Entertainment was ever proven in a court of law.
Well, being charged doesn't mean that he's being convicted. Like, it's saying, like, you're being charged... Say someone decides to press charges, like, because you assaulted them or something, but then later they find out that you were actually innocent. And you're still being charged, but you don't get convicted because you're proven innocent, or because you're not proven guilty, right? So I don't think that was a retcon. I think that's just... I think it was kind of a retcon, but it's more so just like that was kind of left open-ended, whether he was actually convicted or not. Like, he was still charged, so that hasn't changed. So I don't really think that's the retcon. It could be, but I don't think that is.
The MCI is the biggest incident haunting their company through decades, and what that very game was making fun of. People argue that maybe someone else got convicted, which even if we ignore the Help Wanted quote for some reason, Henry specifically states in FNaF 6 that he knows about William's evil, implying that it's similar to the novel trilogy where everyone knows the murderer is William, but they just can't charge him due to the lack of evidence. Not only that, but William being the main suspect also explains why he goes under a disguise in FNaF 2 as a night guard, since, well, he's the main suspect and the toy animatronics are specifically programmed to go after criminals. Not only that, but every single game and timeline shows that William gets away with it due to hiding the bodies, and that no one was arrested in his place. This is also all doubled down in the Silver Eyes, by directly referencing this very charged and convicted newspaper by specifically mentioning that William couldn't even be charged due to the disappearances of the bodies. People have theorized that how long the animatronics have been around for, with the quote,
"If I were forced to sing those same stupid songs for 20 years and I never got a bath, I'd probably be a bit irritable at night too."
Maybe the retcon...
The newspaper title says the suspect was convicted. Does it? I thought it only said charged. Hold on. Oh, it does. Damn it. Okay, never mind.
Instead, and it's usually seen as the, if not the conviction line, it's definitely...
See, I used to say it said that he was convicted, and then people told me no, it didn't, and then I reread the newspaper, and I was like, oh yeah, it doesn't. Okay, I was wrong. But I didn't realize that was the title.
Since those two are the strongest options for the retcon. Although not only do I believe that to be a simple over-exaggeration on the phone guy's part, but Secret of the Mimic came out swinging and showed us that the classics existed way back in 1979. R&D, where they're housed, specifically being made in 1975. And due to Fiona having a part of it, the idea for them existed before 1973 as well. Meaning that the classics have indeed existed for around about 20 years in total by the time of FNaF 1. Also further proving that there was no possible way to have noticed it to be retconned back in Sister Location when the post was made, despite Scott stating that the retcon was noticeable and some have. So with the only real opposing contender out the way, this is why you'll notice that most theorists don't ever use this suspect convicted line in their timelines or theories, or simply just forget about it, as well as why I will avoid it in my upcoming timeline video too, as it was most likely Scott's admitted one retcon. So now that truly is everything we know about the MCI after all. But don't worry, we'll talk about the why and William's motivations and characterization in a future video when the time comes.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it,
Okay, never
just
mind.
by thinking about it. Meet Base 40.
Now, before we talk timelines, let's move on to stuff within the game itself, such as Mike being instructed by the phone guy about what to do in the job, who is going through his final week at the time of the recordings himself. We later learn in the interactive novel The Week Before that the phone guy's name is Ralph, and that he actually has a daughter named Copiella. We also learn within the book that Ralph truly loves the Freddy's franchises.
I don't think that's what her name is.
Denies or downplays the situations that he's put in, which we see in FNaF 2. This makes the fact that he unfortunately dies at the end of his week even sadder, and we can hear through his final call that he's actually surrounded by all 4 of the animatronics before Golden Freddy goes in for the kill. Although on our final night we get another phone call. This one being a distorted and backwards excerpt from the book Autobiography of a Yogi, taken from chapter 8, about the possibility of metal being able to contain life. This is a reference to what later becomes known as Remnant, which is basically the fancy way of explaining possession in FNaF, as the element is created when any metal, so the endoskeletons, is possessed by a soul. This metal can then be melted down into a malleable liquid, which can then be used to transfer Remnant from one object into another. When Remnant is used on a person instead, not only can that person interact with Ghost as shown off in the 4th closet, and some believe Follow Me, but they also gain a healing ability, whether it's healing the body shown off in Sister Location, or going as far as to cure cancer and other diseases, shown off in the anthology books. But either way, the reason the phone call repeats this excerpt may actually be because Ruff ends up possessing the phone itself with this exact method, as we know that he dies while recording his final message, which may mean that his soul could have latched onto that piece of metal and possessed it, also explaining his random presence in Ultimate Custom Night, despite being the only human and seemingly non-supernatural entity on the roster. This game is also where Ralph introduces us to the infamous Bite of 87, which we learn more about in the next game, so remember to subscribe now so you don't miss that video. Either way, let's now talk about the elephant in the room. What year does FNaF 1 take place? This has been a debate for a decade, more recently coming back as a topic due to the interactive novel The Week Before, giving us some clues on the time frame. So let's begin investigating. As you probably know, by taking the amount we're paid on night 5, $120, and dividing it by the 30 hours we work over 5 nights, we get a wage of $4 per hour, which wasn't ever the exact minimum wage during any specific year, but due to Scott making FNaF 2 have the exact and accurate minimum wage of 1987, due to this very method being used for FNaF 1, it does seem like it was almost definitely meant to imply that it was basically minimum wage, which Scott did confirm that it was meant to be shortly after the game's initial release, and so likely places the game between 1991, where it was $3.80, and 1996, the year before it moved too far away to $4.75. This leaves us with 6 years that FNaF 1 could take place, and luckily The Week Before answers which one. Within the book, we learn that Ralph has never brought Copiella to Freddy's, even on Bring Your Child to Work Day, which most people skim past but is actually quite important, as Bring Your Child to Work Day was first celebrated officially on the 26th of March in 1993, this eliminating 1991 and 1992, leaving only 4 years, although throughout the book, we actually learn that Ralph takes Copiella to school quite even on Bring Your Child to Work Day, which most people skim past but is actually
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Bring Your Child to Work Day was first celebrated officially on the 26th of March in 1993, this eliminating 1991 and 1992, leaving only 4 years, although throughout the book, we actually learn that Ralph takes Copiella to school after each of his shifts. After night 1, it mentions that, quote, getting your 11-year-old daughter Copiella up and ready for school is more challenging than anything Freddy Fazbear's Pizza could throw your way. And after night 5, he asks, shouldn't you be in school? To which she replies, you said I could stay home today, which shows us that the 5 nights is a regular Monday to Friday work week, with her going to school for 4 days and then staying home on the Friday. Further back with Copiella saying before he goes to night 6, this week almost killed you, meaning the week hasn't crossed over yet. We can then cross-reference this with the FNaF 1 paycheck. stating that the 5th night, so the Friday, is the 12th of November, so night 1 was the 8th, and therefore puts Ralph's first shift, the Monday before Mike's, on Monday the 1st of November. The only year out of our remaining 4 options to have the 1st of November be on a Monday is 1993. As you probably know, 1993 was the date that was already theorized by Matt Pat from Game Theory back in his first ever theory about the game, and it's been the date that's been mutually accepted by a large majority of the community for the past decade. So besides just the week before, is there anything else hinting at us being correct about that date originally? Well, not only did Scott make the following game use the same wage method MatPat used, almost as if he was implying the theory was correct, but for this we must talk about a future game, FNaF 3, as their dates back each other up and are closely related, since back when the game first released, the 1993 date was used to theorize that FNaF 3 takes place in 2023, funnily enough the year of the rabbit, due to it taking place 30 years after FNaF 1, which we know due to the source code leading up to the game stating Five Nights at Freddy's 30 years later, only one, meaning it takes place 30 years after the first game itself, as well as the description of the game noting that a Freddy's closure leads directly into the story of FNaF 3, which we then just happen to have the Follow Me minigames, that perfectly recreate that description, playing within the closed down FNaF 1 Freddy's that leads directly into the story of FNaF 3. This is then even stated in the Ultimate Guide as a fact, not even in the theory section, with a quote, "It's been 30 years since the last Freddy Fazbear's Pizza shut down," which makes
but to be fair, it also says, at another point in the same, like, page, or, like, in the same chapter, at least, it says something about, like, oh yeah, this is 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed, though we don't know which one, so it kind of contradicts itself, like it says both.
Extra sense considering the first Freddy's eventually reopened with the FNaF 1 location, meaning it wasn't abandoned and hadn't closed its doors, a saying most commonly used for a permanent closure, until the FNaF 1 location closed. But either way, following that theory, Scott then decided to reference that very year in FNaF 6, with Henry's audio log being titled 223.
Okay. That's all pretty interesting, though. I actually think that's pretty convincing.
The audio log where Henry starts investigating, talking about the past, and organizing his plan. Which, feel free to disagree, but I personally take that as Scott confirming we were indeed correct about the 2023 date, and therefore 1993 as well. Some will say that 223 doesn't mean 2023, but not only do I think Scott knows better than to choose that specific number in a game that's intentionally meant to clean up the story, but the full file name actually tells us that it's meant to be 2023 in itself. Think about it, HRY223 is the full title, HRY standing for Henry, which if you notice, takes the first and then the last 2 letters from the real name for the file name. Exactly like 223 standing for 2023 would
also, it's hard to say that HRY means Henry because you got rid of the N, which is kind of important. Excuse me, it's kind of important. So missing the 0 from 223 from 2023 kind of like it's very clearly like you wouldn't really get that from it logically, but if you're removing the N from the HRY, it's not that far-fetched to remove the 0 from 2023.
Taking the first and then last 2 numbers from the real number for the file number. That process in itself helps us figure out what the other portion of the file name is, no matter if you start decoding it knowing HRY is Henry first, or that 223 is 2023 first. I've also seen people say that the ... must mean it's not the end of the file name. However, that's not actually true, and is honestly
that works.
As ... is also commonly used when you're installing, playing, loading, whatever actioning a file to. I want that to be clear. ... does not exclusively mean there's more to a file name, especially not what's for only a 6-character title. The Ultimate Guide then backs this up directly. But besides,
if there was more to it, then that means it could be longer than 6, meaning it would just say Henry.
It's HRY223. In the Fazbear Fright story, what we found, we're introduced to a night guard at Fazbear's Fright, the FNaF 3 location, who just happens to be 23 years old. The other work is also being 23 too, yet another reference to that date. And speaking of books, the survival logbook also contains an almost 3-decade time skip between the FNaF 1 Freddy's and whenever Mike is writing in it, which is heavily implied to be FNaF 3, which we'll talk more about the logbook in the FNaF 3 video itself. Although before we can actually figure out that exact time skip, we just happen to put a 9 and a 3 together to get our final amount, a direct reference to 1993. And also referencing that date leading to our FNaF 3 date. Not only all of that, but Into the Pit is
yeah, but what? Are we just ignoring the actual code itself, or hold on?
reference to that date. And speaking of books, the survival logbook also contains an almost 3-decade time skip between the FNaF 1 Freddy's and whenever Mike is writing in it, which is heavily implied to be FNaF 3.
Okay, so you're just kind of
disregarding
it.
Logbook in the FNaF 3 video itself. Although before we can actually figure out that exact time skip, we just happen to put a 9 and a 3 together to get our final amount, a direct reference to 1993. And also referencing that date leading to our FNaF 3 day. Not only all of that, but Into the Pit is heavily theorized to take place in the 2020s, most likely 2020 itself, due to the graphic novel adaptation, specifically adding a new part with Oswald mentioning a movie called Zendrelic's 2020, a reference to Godzilla 2000, and so 2020 likely meaning the year of release. The official in-universe Jeff's Pizza website leaked to have logs dated March 23rd, 2020, October 27th, 2020, etc. Megacat Studios' anniversary post having the in-game calendar have August 8th on a Saturday, which the closest surrounding years that's happened is in 2020 and 2026, as well as the game having a character called VTuber Fan who references the VTuber Gorgura, who specifically started in the year 2020. This is all important to this discussion, because Into the Pit actually takes place prior to FNaF 3 and FNaF 6, as we see the same arcade cabinets, paper pals, random drawings and images, and more memorabilia that were all eventually taken from this location to Fazbear's Fright, as well as Trash of the Gang plus Helpy appearing in random dumpsters in modern day, that were eventually taken for the Dumpster Diver weekly catalogue in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place. Whether Into the Pit is or isn't in the game timeline is a big question that we honestly don't really have to tackle, since it doesn't really impact the overall story in any way. But whether it's parallels or in continuity, this would be directly hinting to us that FNaF 3 and FNaF 6 indeed take place within the 2020s, which is specifically solvable by using FNaF 1's theorized year of 1993, and reinforces this very theory that they take place in 2023. Something else to add to the conversation is also the fact that Scott Cawthon himself has actually gone on record to say, you know, when I released the first game over a year ago, I was amazed at how quickly everyone found every bit of lore and story. Then the same happened with part 2. Fans and YouTubers dug in and found everything. Game Theory did an incredible video on part 2, getting almost everything right. Then part 3 came out, and once again the story was uncovered by the community. It seemed that there was nothing I could hide. This statement seems to tell us that we as a community, mainly through Game Theory's videos, as mentioned, was able to uncover all the lore from these games, which would of course include the years that FNaF 1 and FNaF 3 take place, which would be backed up with him later stating that every question raised from FNaF 1 to 4 was definitively solvable. And at the time of these posts, everyone was on the same page that the games took place in 1993 and 2023 respectively. There's some smaller things too, such as Steelwool Studios later doing guest sketch teasers, with FNaF attached on only a few of them. One of those exclusive ones featured Andre the Giant, who unfortunately died in 1993, and Metal Sonic, who made his debut in 1993 as well, which the year of 1993 is the only thing relating those two things together, or even with the unused FNaF AR emails that directly use the 1993 date twice.
Well, I don't trust that,
emails
but...
go unused for an unknown reason, so we can't really use them as big evidence. But I do think it's interesting that it also mentions that the location apparently opened in 1988, as this coincidentally correlates to the week before, stating that Ralph brought Copiella to work to meet the animatronics when she was 7. Which, since she's turning 12 in December, of what we're assuming to be 1983, would then mean that she would have gone to a Freddy's location in 1988. Happy coincidence, or a hint that Scott turned the unused email canon? Either way though, with all of this information in mind, I'm still as sure as I've always been for the past decade that FNaF 1 takes place in 1993, and also that FNaF 3 takes place in 2023. So remember the solution for the future FNaF 3 video.
Okay. Well, I think the FNaF, the 1993 stuff is pretty convincing. The FNaF 3 stuff, I'm not really that sure about, but I get it.
Last but not least, we should also talk about the main protagonist of FNAF's original story, Michael Afton, here under Mike Schmidt, which due to the new movie, splitting these Mikes into two separate characters, has caused some confusion about whether they're truly one character, although luckily for us, the security logbook confirms this to be the case, with the same Mike who later works at Sister Location also noting to have the nightmares from FNAF 4, which within contains a call from the phone guy from FNAF 1, therefore linking the two together, which Sister Location itself doubles down on with the private bunker, Michael being introduced to us as just Mike, and also the music for his speech containing the motif from the Toreador March from the first game too. So with that and more, Michael Schmidt is indeed Michael Afton. We learn a lot more about him later in the story, but a question this game proposed was the reason that Mike was hallucinating so much, from the posters and the cameras to even the thoughts in his mind. We've assumed it since FNAF 1's release, but most clearly shown in the FNAF movie, it appears that the reason for this is actually because the building itself is alive, aka haunted. Within the movie, when the spirits are angry and vengeful, the entire building just decides to start collapsing. And it's also further hinted at with later installments, such as Security Breach's Ruin DLC, where a bunch of objects move around and fall over for no purpose. Not only that, but it's even mentioned in the character encyclopedia, when talking about Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, quote, "Never build anything over the ruins of a haunted building, kids." And with all of the spirits in agony in this game as well as the following games, which also have a ton of hallucinations and ghostly shenanigans too, it makes a lot of sense that there's simply a lot of supernatural energy throughout the buildings, that causes them to basically appear alive. I truly don't think there's a larger reason than just that it's supernatural stuff happening, and at most you could extend it to being because of agony. Basically, to define it simply, as we learn through multiple sources, mainly through the Fazbear Fright series, which the new book Ticket to Fun seemingly confirmed that agony uses the same logic in the games too, by having UV lights reveal hidden messages based around agony, which directly mirrors the Fright's epilogues, explaining that agony can be viewable by turning out all the lights and using a blue light too. If there's a large amount of emotional agony generated due to a tragedy or something similar, that agony can actually infect a nearby object, or in this case a building, and cause it to be haunted without needing a specific spirit attached. This agony in extreme cases can even go on to manifest itself into an agony being, which we'll see in the later games. And to try and differentiate the two through these videos, I'll try specifically calling animatronics with actual spirits within them as possessed, while calling supernatural entities caused by agony as haunted. But as you can probably tell, FNAF 1 doesn't give us too much lore on its own, and a lot of this video was using the later games to expand upon the characters and events it simply introduced. Although we can solidify for my final timeline that besides what we're directly told / shown, the FNAF 1 Freddy's use the same designs and buildings as the first original Freddy's. Exactly who, what, when, where the missing children's incident occurs, what detail to ignore that was retconned from the lore, that FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, and also FNAF 3 in 2023, that the buildings throughout the games are also haunted, causing all the hallucinations and ghostly shenanigans, and finally a clear understanding on how Remnant and Agony work in this universe. So, with every aspect of FNAF 1 answered, we can now move on to FNAF 2, to try and solve everything within it, coming next month. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it, as well as all the other FNAF 1 content coming this month. A big shout out to all my channel members, become one today. Please be respectful to everyone when discussing what are simply theories, and I really hope you all enjoyed and have a great day / night. Bye.
Bye. Okay, that's a good theory. I think the stuff about the classics and stuff, I think that's definitely worth noting. Like I said, I'll probably talk about that in my like follow-up video to my Withered video. And I think the 1993 stuff is pretty convincing. The FNAF 3 stuff I don't think is fully convincing, just because I think it can be in 2023. I'm not like, sorry, I'm not completely opposed to it being in 2023. I just don't think it necessarily has to be, and I think there's and I feel like it's kind of, I feel like we shouldn't disregard the logbook code, because I feel like if Scott was like, if it was just meant to be up until the year that it came out, and it's not meant to be like brain. If it wasn't meant to be important, and if it wasn't meant to be about saying that the logbook was in 2017 in universe, then I feel like it wouldn't happen at all, because it wouldn't have been included at all, because why would Scott be like include an inflation code for in the logbook when the year of the logbook hasn't happened yet? I feel like it's weird to include that at all if it wasn't meant to be 2017 or 2015 if you think FNaF 1's in 1992. I think his whole evidence about the week before and stuff, it's pretty good evidence, I think. If you don't use the week before, I think 1992 is a more logical option, but I think that, and I think like the other stuff doesn't necessarily have to be that important. It can be, but I don't think it has to be. But using the week before, I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, now we're gonna watch the next and last one, which is ID's Fantasies video. Give me 1 second. Just the week before and play the FNaF 1 location only open during the year of the story, and FNaF 1 itself obviously takes place. It does, yeah. Yeah, I feel like FNaF 1 probably didn't open like right after FNaF 2, because like I don't think those Faz facts are really trustworthy. FNaF 1 might be in 1993, but I don't think that the Faz facts are really kind of hinting towards that, because I think it was confirmed that they were just made by someone without actually knowing the lore. Like, they were just made by a random person. And that's why they were scrapped, I think. I could be wrong, but I remember people saying that. You haven't watched her theories for a long time. Yeah, I think, I don't remember when the last time I watched her, I don't think I've ever watched her theories on a video. I don't think I have. I could be wrong. Maybe I have. Or a stream or whatever. But I have watched one of her theories relatively recently, because, like for when I made my Glamrock Freddy video, I watched her video on it because I was trying to gather all the evidence for all the different ideas. So. But yeah, as for the FNaF 1 location, if you don't trust the fast facts, then like it can easily just open in 1993 and then close in 1993 as well. So that doesn't really change anything. How's stream doing? Pretty decent. Okay. Oh yeah. Uh-oh. Whoops. I'm yawning. Well, I was yawning. I want to go back to his FNaF 1 video. Because I closed it. But I want to go back through. I'll use a whole Campelia visited Freddy's when she was 7 detail line address. What is she? Is she... Oh, right. She's 11, isn't she? I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. God damn it, that was a wrench and everything. I best turned 12. So even if you say 5 years ago, that's still 1988. Damn it. And this is November, so you can't even say... God damn it. So you can't even say he's just rounding down. Or up, or what. My brain can't think right now. I don't remember which one it is. And FNaF 2 is like exactly 6 years before FNaF 1, so that's annoying. So you can't say FNaF 2 either. (1993, 2023) or 1992, 2015? I'd say more 1993, 2017 is more likely. Well, not necessarily more likely, but just as likely. Did you stress that the Freddy's opened in 88 and closed in 1993? Well, I think he was saying that because of the fast fact saying it opened in 88 and closed in 93. Maybe that's what he was talking about. Or if he said that at all. I don't remember if he said that. But, did he stress... I don't know. God damn it. This is annoying. Because the week before is so... Okay, I'm starting to understand why Sandwich Man doesn't trust the week before. See, if the week before was in 1992... Sorry, if the week before didn't have the school day thing, that wouldn't even matter. It really wouldn't matter. Oh my god, this is annoying. Hold on, let me actually check I have it right here, luckily. I was looking at it a couple days ago because I was writing a part of it in my script. Okay, where's the end of night 1? I think right there, right? 229 is night 1. 229. Ready for school. W1, okay. So on night 1 and night 2, she goes to school. Home again. On night 3, she goes to school. God damn it. Does she go to school every day? God, if there were 2 days in a row and she didn't go to school, that wouldn't be a problem. So, she has school on all 5 nights, meaning it is Monday to... God damn it. He goes to work on Monday morning then, and then he gets home on Monday morning. So if I go back... 1987, it's November 11th and 12th. It's November 12th is a Thursday. Meaning, that's night 5. Night 4, night 3, night 2, night 1. So night 1 is on a Sunday. God damn it. You could easily say that the take your child to work day is just you could easily say take your child to work day is just like a company thing rather than a national holiday thing. So that wouldn't be that much of a problem. But the fact that she goes to school on all 5 days is a problem. Why am I stumped now? 1991, I assume you don't go to school on every day. Yeah. In 92, that's a problem. Because it starts on a Sunday. But 93, it's perfectly fine. God. So how did she go to school? Freddy's wasn't open. Freddy's wasn't open in 1998 or 9. It's The Godfather Part 3, which came out in 1990. Yeah, I used to think that that FNaF one was in 1989 until people pointed that out to me, and I was like, God damn it, then I have to move it up to 92. And 92 seemed to work. And school is like the most basic thing to take into account ever, but I completely forgot about it. And that's not even that big of a problem. The problem is, unless we say FNaF 1 location closed and reopened a bunch of times. Yeah, but I doubt that. I feel like the thing is, he says when the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take the night shift myself. And he just started the night shift, and he just ended the night shift. Like, this week seems to be his first and last. So, I don't know. Why is the stream lagged? Is it? That sucks. Lips and not syncing. Hold on. Let me see. Last. So, seems fine. I don't... But I doubt that. Seems fine. 92 seemed to work. Seems fine. The Godfather Part 3 which seems fine. How did she go to school? Freddy's wasn't open.
Yeah, it seems fine. It might just be you. Disney trademarked it in 1999, so there's that. Yeah. Well, new video idea. When do I do that video, though? Sixth, 13th, 20th, 27th. And this will be March 5th. Okay, I've decided I'm making I'm making a video on this. Why did I cross out his name in the logbook? Good question. I do not know. I'm honored to have indirectly inspired a new video idea for you. Thank you.
I'm going to take a small break, go to the bathroom, and try to wrap my head around this, take notes for a video that I'm going to make on this. I'll be back in a couple minutes. Whoops, I almost dropped my mic. Alright, we're back. I've been taking all the notes for for when I make that week before video. Shit is very problematic. There's one other thing I gotta write, actually. You can't argue the book isn't in the games, because it's literally called The Week Before, and is said to be the week before FNaF 1. Anyway. So it's just inconsistent with the lore. Yeah, anyway. Wonderful stuff. Yup. Week 4 wasn't canon, it would still make no sense. Yup. God. Alright. Let's watch ID's Fantasies video, shall we? Let's see if we can repair our brains. It's this one. Cool. God damn it, I forgot to do what I was supposed to do. I literally opened up the video again so that I could take all the notes for the Wizards not being the originals, and I completely forgot to do that too. God damn it. Okay, so he does that. He talks about that pretty early. So I'll pull it up again. Okay, let's see.
Due to the first FNaF book, The Silver Eyes, directly stating that the children went missing 10 years before the story takes place.
Okay, so it's a little bit later, right?
Been building that MTI at the
same building.
A life away. Funnily enough, Henry's insanity also up the FNaF 1 Freddy's, but the 1985 Freddy being kept are the designs of the animatronics. In the interactive novel The Week Before, which explicitly takes place, well, the week before FNaF 1, the phone guy himself specifically thinks, quote, the brown bear is dapper as always in his black top hat and bow tie. You're glad they restored the vintage animatronic with his classic look, meaning that his FNaF 1 design is the same restored classic design from the first location. This also makes sense with the fact that Help Wanted, with Pizza Party, which is a direct recreation of the MCI, Into the Pit, not only with the animatronics themselves, but also through the scrapbook, cutouts and more, and Secret of the Mimic, with the prototypes underground, directly show us that the first ever 1985 Freddy's used the same designs of the classics from FNaF 1. Speaking of Into the Pit, we're even shown the arcades with the animatronic faces on them in the 1985 Freddy's. That's a specific pull from FNaF 3 with its arcade machines in the main gameplay, that also just happen to have the designs of the classics on them as well, to further push this main idea. Dead by Daylight also reiterating it all with the classic designs in the 85 location. That's not all the evidence for that though, as within FNaF 2 we see not only the classic designs being used for plushies that seemingly came from the original Freddy's, but we also see dream cutscenes that take place at that older Freddy's, showcasing the classic designs as well as the same dining area from FNaF 1. This exact framing being referenced with the Help Wanted and Secret of the Mimic endings, both using the classic designs for the originals, further connecting both the 1985 designs and location to the FNaF 1 designs and location. The FNaF movie even has the Freddy's where the MCI are killed be the exact same one as the one that Mike works at later in the timeline, even with fixed versions of the animatronics such as Foxy. If all of that is not enough, Not only is Ultimate Custom Night's map the FNaF 1 map, implying this location is based off the memory of where the one you should not have killed died, likely from the MCI, but Secret of the Mimic's prototype Freddy's is literally just the FNaF 1 map as well to further this idea, and the first help wanted also gives us a cherry on top, with the first coin for the first ever Freddy's featuring the face of a FNaF 1 designed Freddy. The whole theory then finalized with the FNaF 1 animatronics all using Endo 01s, despite us seeing these in gameplay after the Endo 02s were used in 87. All in all, meaning the FNaF 1 Freddy's is literally just a redone 1985 Freddy's, with the same designs and in the same building due to the company's lack of money by this point in time. Either way, we of course later know that the murderer was a man named William.
Okay. I think that's about it. Is this for the Wizards video? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. All right. Well, now we can watch the ID's Fantasy video. 20 minutes. And then after we watch this, we'll end the stream. Okay, let's go. Secret of the Mimic solves FNAF's redesign problem and doesn't retcon Henry. FNAF theory. 20 minutes and 27 seconds. Let's go.
These are the withered animatronics from FNAF 2. These are the classic... These are the withered animatronics from FNAF 2. These are the classic animatronics from FNAF 1. These are the Springlock animatronics from the Silver Eyes novel trilogy, and these are early versions of the classic and Springlock animatronics in Secret of the Mimic. Five Nights at Freddy's has had a lot of different animatronic designs at different points in the series, but while it's usually pretty easy to tell which animatronics were put to use at which locations at which points in time, that's ironically not the case for the most long-standing versions of the characters. After all, if the FNAF 1 animatronics are meant to be refurbished versions of the FNAF 2 wizards, as FNAF 2 seems to imply, why do some of the books and games imply that the classic designs were used before FNAF 2? If we've been told that Henry Emily is the one who built the Springlock and original animatronics, why do the new characters, Edwin and Fiona Murray, seem to be behind their creation and design instead? Has Scott Cawthon started retconning the lore, or is there an answer that takes into account all of the evidence that might seem contradictory? Fortunately, I think I figured out exactly what happened with these animatronics, how everything could work without causing issues for either the new or old information we've received, and how the answer has actually been in plain sight for years. But first, I just want to let you guys know that I've got a new makeshift plushie available as of the public release of this video, assuming this video comes out on time. But instead of my
it did not release on
this
time.
I thought it'd be cool to do one of Alex. You may recognize Alex as the little
I
blonde guy
apologize,
sleeping
but I
on
will
Freddy
skip this.
video. You can text
This
for
was
the
5 months
animatronics
ago,
and
so-
characters I'm going to be talking hand. I should probably first quickly summarize the context for the animatronics and characters I'm going to be talking about here, especially since the games with some of the information about the relevant animatronics are kind of old at this point. Happy 11th anniversary to FNAF, by the way, and Secret of the Mimic is still recent and less well known. So back when FNAF 1 came out, we were introduced to our main cast of haunted animatronics in what are generally known as their classic designs. We learned that the animatronics are possessed by the spirits of a group of 5 children who were lured into the back of a Freddy's by a guy in a mascot costume, which would later be revealed to be William Afton, who killed them and put their bodies into the animatronics, which then started smelling bad because, you know, dead bodies. The bodies weren't found, but people were still put off by the whole situation, and that event is generally referred to as the Missing Children incident. Eventually that Freddy's closed, but Freddy's as a franchise didn't stay down forever, as shown by both FNAF 1 and its prequel, FNAF 2. FNAF 2 is where things get a little weird. It's a new Freddy's, according to Ralph the Phone Guy, while the old location where the murders happened was left to rot. The thing is, while the main attractions of the location, the toy animatronics, are fancy new ones, there are also the withered animatronics, which Phone Guy describes as the older models from the previous location that were going to be repaired and started being retrofitted with new technology, but ended up just being used for parts instead because they were really ugly and smelled horrible, presumably because they had dead bodies of children in them. Once the FNAF 2 location gets shut down, the toys are scrapped, but the originals are said to be held onto for a future opening on a lower budget, which, considering the timeline, would most likely be FNAF 1. The issue here is that the Withers and the classics not only look nothing alike from an outer design perspective, but their endoskeletons are also just entirely different. In FNAF 1, the classics have the Endo 01 model, with thinner limbs and visible wiring. Meanwhile, in FNAF 2, the endos that are used are Endo 02s, which have rings around the limbs, a pseudo ribcage, and 3 toes instead of 2. However, in spite of that, the games definitely seem to imply that they're the same animatronics, with how the Withers are said to be the originals, and that they would be reused at a later location, and the original Five Nights at Freddy's having clearly haunted animatronics that would pretty much have to be the original ones that got haunted. How does that work if they're physically entirely different animatronics, you might ask? Well, I have an answer, but that's going to be after the context, so just hold on to that question for a bit.
Okay.
Either way, there's the location where the missing children incident happened, the animatronics got possessed, presumably ended up as the broken withered animatronics in FNAF 2, and then as the classics in FNAF 1. Other stuff might have happened in there, but we'll get to that later. Then FNAF 3 introduced us to the concept of Springlock suits. There were 2 Springlock suits at Freddy's, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, which could be animatronics or have the animatronic parts held to the sides of the costume by Springlocks. If the Springlocks were to fail, the parts move back to their original locations regardless of whether or not there was a person inside. This is what happens to William Afton in FNAF 3's Follow Me minigames, where William breaks the animatronics in the FNAF 1 location before getting chased by the spirits of his victims into the Spring Bonnie suit. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, Fredbear was the predecessor to Golden Freddy, as shown by the similar coloration and design, as well as Golden Freddy in Ultimate Custom Night providing a Fredbear jump scare under certain circumstances. The difference in their appearances can likely be attributed to whatever design modifications happened with the Wizards in the classics, considering there's a Withered and classic iteration of Golden Freddy. Eventually, the Silver Eyes novel trilogy and Pizzeria Simulator game came out and introduced us to Henry Emily. While the Silver Eyes books may be a different continuity from the games, they are still canon in the sense of the overall franchise, and in those books we find out that Henry Emily was William Afton's business partner, and the two of them ran Fredbear's Family Diner and its successor, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. William was primarily the business-savvy guy, and while he could do animatronics, Henry was the real mastermind behind them, and he created both the Springlock and standard animatronics. Pizzeria Simulator re-emphasizes this when, in a recording in the Insanity ending, Henry talks about small souls trapped in prisons of his making. Since Henry doesn't exactly have a reason to lie about making the animatronics, in a recording that he didn't plan for anyone to listen to, as shown by how listening to it gets the player character chucked into a mental institution to make them seem crazy, this seemed to solidify Henry as the creator of all the early animatronics except for the fun times, which were made by William through Afton Robotics.
We are a nation of builders.
Then Secret of the Mimic came out and revealed that a new character, Edwin Murray, and his company, Murray's Costume Manor, were working on something called the Fazbear Project in the 70s before Freddy Fazbear's Pizza existed. In the underground research and development portion of the building, there's a prototype of the FNaF 1 location that has Springlock models of Fredbear, Bonnie, this random dog guy named Bub, and Monty from Security Breach, as well as prototype models of the classic animatronics with Endo 01 model endoskeletons. Various messages and recordings reveal that Edwin was friends with Henry and probably also William, considering Edwin mentions friends plural at one point, and Edwin and his wife Fiona designed the animatronics found in the Proto-Freddy's location, though it might have been his mimic wife at that point, but who knows. Anyway, while working on the Fazbear project, Edwin made the Springlock suits, only to be told that they were going to be switching to regular animatronics, much to his confusion and dismay, but Fiona then created new character designs that Edwin thought were great, only for Fazbear to come back and show him different, creepier designs that they wanted to use while Edwin was almost done in production, and Edwin refused. Then somewhere along the line, Fazbear Entertainment bought out his failing company after draining all his resources and poaching his employees, which meant they could yoink all the stuff he was working on and use it for whatever they wanted. Understandably, this was pretty shocking considering we've been told for years that Henry is the one who made the animatronics, only for Secret of the Mimic to come in and seemingly say that Edwin and Fiona were the ones who did it instead, which, considering Scott Cawthon is listed as the writer of Secret of the Mimic, seems a bit weird since in a Reddit post he made a bit before Pizzeria Simulator came out, he mentioned not retconning things on a whim out of respect for the fanbase. To be fair, the usage of retcon is most likely referring to contradicting additions to the lore rather than just new lore that changes our perspective of things, which is technically the actual definition of the word, but based on Scott's usage of the term, it seems to be referring to the contradictions. Because there have been a lot of things with the
adding stuff to the story that doesn't contradict things is not really a retcon, it's just a new story.
Game that have come out that have changed our perspective on things, but that's besides the point. While I know a lot of people think Scott does retcon the lore in terms of contradicting stuff that's already established, I prefer to take Scott at his word that he doesn't retcon things on a whim, because if he does actually put a bunch of stuff to contradict just because he feels like it, that would mean pretty much everything in the franchise can't be trusted at all, which would make theorizing kind of pointless. Fortunately, I think there's an explanation for this supposed contradiction that keeps Henry's claims of creating the animatronics intact while accounting for Edwin's contributions, but also explains some of the more confusing parts of how and why the Freddy's gang changed over time while still retaining their haunted status. Between the classics, Wizards, and Springlock animatronics, the Springlocks are probably the easiest to explain. After all, we have some good evidence that the Springlock animatronics were made by both Edwin and Henry, with Henry probably being the one to create the initial designs. For one thing, when talking about how Hen sent a change order about switching from Springlock suits to normal animatronics, Edwin mentions that it would be easier to keep using the Springlocks and just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do. The usage of we implies that there's some sort of collaborative effort or joint creatorship and usage between Henry and Edwin on the Springlock suits. On top of this, while most of the blueprints for various animatronics and costumes that can be found around the Costume Manor have MCM branding on them, there's one that doesn't for a more basic version of the Captain Springlock suit that's used in the Foxy Puppet Show. I think that this shows that someone unaffiliated with Murray's Costume Manor was most likely the source of this blueprint and the original Springlock suit designs. As such, it stands to reason that Henry's probably the source of this blueprint when we account for other canon.
Yeah, I think he kind of just designed them, and then he was like, Edwin, make these, but make better versions of the Springlocks because mine kind of suck. And then they don't end up using Edwin's in the end for some reason.
Indicating him as a Springlock suit creator. Since he and Edwin were friends on a nickname basis, and Fazbear clearly hired MCM to do work for them, I think it would make a lot of sense for Henry to share those blueprints with Edwin so that he would be able to help develop the Springlock suits and characters for use in Fazbear locations. After all, William and Henry building every single thing for every single location as the business expanded, while also running Fredbear's and getting ready for Freddy's to open, wouldn't be super realistic. But what's to say this joint effort still didn't result in Edwin building the animatronics for Freddy's? Well, for one thing, the Springlock suits in Secret of the Mimic don't operate the same way as the ones that Henry presumably built for Freddy's. FNaF 3 establishes that the suits at Freddy's work by using a hand crank to push the animatronic parts to the sides of the suit, which I think could be what this little doohickey on the Captain Springlock blueprint is. However, the fancy Captain suit that we see in Secret of the Mimic instead needs to be energized before it can be worn. Something interesting that we're essentially told through Secret of the Mimic is that Edwin created new Springlock suits that were safer to wear. There's a message from Fiona to Edwin where she talks about one of her costumers nearly losing a hand to the new suit design when he spilled soda on the mechanisms, and presumably some point later, Edwin sends her a message about new Springlocks that work well even with water damage. I think these are both pieces of evidence to show that Edwin built on Henry's initial blueprints to create better versions of the Springlocks for the characters. Maybe if William and Henry hadn't screwed Edwin over and actually used his suit designs, William wouldn't have been done in by the leaky ceiling that most likely caused the Springlock failure in the Follow Me minigames. Additionally, the Springlock suits in Proto Freddy's don't really look like they match the versions of the characters we usually see in the games. Maybe you could say the Fredbear one looks kind of like what we see in FNaF 4's 8-bit minigames in terms of the jaw hinge, but its ears and teeth are different. This is the same set of minigames where Michael Afton's skin tone changes from light to dark randomly, and when we see Ultimate Custom Night Fredbear, we can see that Fredbear looks a whole lot like classic Freddy Fazbear. Maybe Henry and Edwin collaborated on the original Fredbear design or something, but eventually Fredbear ended up looking like what we see in UCN before getting a slight palette swap to become Golden Freddy. Either way, the Bonnie side of things just looks entirely different between what Edwin made and what we actually see of the Spring Bonnie suit, so between that and how Edwin's Springlocks worked differently and didn't have issues with water damage, when it sure seems like the ones at Freddy's did, it seems like Edwin's Springlock designs weren't used by Henry and William. So as far as I can tell, the Springlock suits that go on to become Golden Freddy and Springtrap are still made by Henry. So if that's the Springlocks, what about the main quartet? Unfortunately, they're a bit more complicated considering they go through two different designs on both an outer and internal level, but in a way that actually makes things easier, at least from the standpoint of who made what. Edwin is the creator of classic animatronic prototypes we see around the location, with Fiona presumably being behind the classic designs, since Edwin did refuse to go with the creepier concepts Fazbear wanted. Which, like, yeah, Fazbear was intentionally screwing him over, but I don't really think it works to be contracted to do something for someone and then deliberately go against the wishes of the company you're doing the work for. Anyway, while the outer shells for the prototype classics are clearly unfinished and would have had to either be modified or rebuilt for when they actually ended up used, unless Henry built new endoskeletons from scratch as well that just happened to be identical to the ones Edwin made, calling them prisons of his making is a bit of a stretch, and would raise the question of why we would even be shown that Edwin made these in the first place. That being said, that only accounts for the FNaF 1 versions of the animatronics. I've always thought it was a little weird from an in-universe perspective that the earlier game in the timeline between FNaF 1 and FNaF 2 has the Endo 02 model of the animatronics, while FNaF being set afterwards has Endo 01. Yeah, FNaF 1 as a game existed first, but it's not like that's the case for the characters. However, that numbering system would make a lot more sense if Edwin first made the Endo 01 models, then Henry made the Endo 02s afterwards, along with the creepier designs that were probably the Wizards. There is an Endo 02 foot on a shelf in Edwin's house, which I point out for the sake of being thorough here, but my thought here is that it's probably kind of like the Springlock blueprints. All it is a single foot, and the actual animatronics that got made don't match, so I think it could be a case where Henry might have provided stuff as reference materials. Or maybe Henry just stole a singular foot for whatever reason, or this could be around as a prop model that Steelwool took from a previous game, but both of those feel less likely to me. Either way, if the Wither designs and the Endo 02 models were the ones Fazbear wanted to use, and Edwin refused to change what he had because he liked Fiona's designs, which had been fully approved up until the final phases of construction, it would make sense at first glance that after Edwin and MCM went under, Henry just fully built functional versions of the withered animatronics, endoskeletons, and designs, and used those instead. Those get possessed, eventually become the classics after FNaF 2 because the withereds were broken, and voila, Henry's creations become the haunted FNaF 1 animatronics. However, I did say at first glance for a reason.
Oh god.
As nice as it would be to just neatly separate things like that, there are a lot of indications that the first designs used at Freddy's were in fact the classics. FNAF 2 has end-of-night cutscenes called Dreams in the Files that show the classic animatronics, Golden Freddy and the puppet, presumably as flashbacks to when the animatronics got possessed after the missing children incident, and the puppet was involved with giving them life. Additionally, in the FNAF 1 prequel book, the week before, Phone Guy's narration mentions, in relation to Freddy, that he's glad to see they restored the vintage animatronic with his classic look, implying that the original look of Freddy matched FNAF 1. Plus, as much as I think Into the Pit is its own sort of spin-off timeline, which I talk about more in a previous video of mine, it is still technically canon in the sense of FNAF as a whole, and is based on a book series that Scott Cawthon said would fill in some of the blanks to the lore. And it shows the classic animatronics as the ones that existed in 1985 when the missing children incident happened. Memory distortion shenanigans or not, we can't see the outline for the Waller of the classics that we see in the 85 version of the pizzeria while in the present, and just blaming everything on memory distortion feels kind of like a cop-out. They could have made them the Wizards if they were meant to be the Wizards, but they didn't. This, of course, leads to the awkward situation of the Murray versions of the animatronics seeming to be the ones that get possessed. And yeah, Henry might have messed with them and finished creating the costumes, but Prisons of My Making feels like taking way too much credit, unless it wasn't the Murray designs after all. At least not entirely. In order for Henry to not be lying, and I don't think he is, he needs to have built the original animatronics that get possessed. Additionally, those animatronics need to somehow stay possessed throughout FNAF 2 and FNAF 1, despite having both their endoskeletons and outer casings switched out entirely between those two games. And the thing is, we've actually been shown how that might work. In Into the Pit, there are various endoskeletons that show up during the game, and when I saw them for the first time, I assumed they were Springlock endos because there was a kid trapped inside one. The thing is, this isn't a Springlock endoskeleton. This is an Endo 02. All of the endoskeletons are Endo 02s. They've got 6 ribs, the 3-toed feet, the bands around the arms. The only place where Endo 01 is depicted is in the sketchbook that Oswald gets from Gabrielle, who got it from either her grandpa or uncle, depending on which in-game text you decide to believe. Which begs the question, why would the 85 Freddys have so many Endo 02 models if the classics were the ones being used? Well, recently, a trailer for the FNAF 2 movie
God, Into the Pit is so confusing.
I've
noticed that
one
too.
Where we see Mike's sister Abby building a small robot that turns out to be a miniature classic Chica. The thing is, while this Chica's endoskeleton for the most part seems to be mostly its own thing, with gaps between pieces in the upper arms and a battery pack in the torso instead of what you'd expect from a life-size animatronic, Chica's hands aren't the Endo 01 model, they're Endo 02s. The FNAF movie might not be the same timeline as the games, but for there to be an Endo 02 hand on Chica in the trailer for the movie that was being worked on at the same time as Secret of the Mimic, it feels like it should be deliberate. Why give...
Yeah, well, now we see in the movie, and we see that Toy Chica and, like, Toy Bonnie and Freddy also helped her with that, so it might just be like they gave her that design because that's the endoskeleton they have. But yeah, these guys I'm really confused about because, like, I've noticed this for a long time, like, that these are Endo 02s, but the, what's it called? The sketchbook shows an Endo 01, so it's like, is the sketchbook from the FNAF 1 location and it's just the Endo 01s are at the FNAF 1 location, and these are just the first Freddy's or something, or is it like, is it something else? Because, like, did the FNAF 1 location open in this timeline at all? I don't know. It's hard to say. I have an explanation for, like, why the endos look different, which I'll talk about in my video, but it doesn't really align with this very well, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure that out.
Chica an Endo 02 hand in the movie and an entire Endo 02 endoskeleton in Into the Pit, unless you're trying to imply that there was a point where the Freddy's animatronics had the classic designs, but Endo 02 endoskeletons. If that's the case, everything suddenly makes a lot more sense. If Henry built the Endo 02 endoskeletons and used the MCM prototypes as a reference for finishing the non-creepy designs that did get approved and made it almost all the way through production, not only would Henry then have ground to stand on for saying they're prisons of his making, but it would also explain how those spirits would have still been anchored to those animatronics, despite changing entirely on both an internal and external level between FNAF 2 and FNAF 1. When William killed the kids and put their bodies in the animatronics, the spirits wouldn't have just haunted the endoskeletons, but the casing as well. After all, possession in the FNAF universe is most common when it comes to metal, and we hear from Phone Guy in FNAF 1 that the problem with getting caught by the animatronics and stuffed into a Freddy suit is that the suits themselves have various mechanical parts, especially around the face. As such, it wouldn't just be the endoskeletons that ended up haunted, but the suits as well. This is actually backed up by the
endoskeletons are the prioritized possession, I guess. But like, I guess yeah, like the shells would kind of have the spirits too, but I think it's more so like the endoskeletons do, and the shells are just connected, so it's kind of like residual spiritual energy or whatever.
Kid a Freddy head for his birthday because the kid really liked Freddy's, and it turned out that it was actually the head of the Freddy that was possessed. When the kid put the head on, he ended up possessed by the spirit that was in Freddy up until the head was put back on him after he snuck out to Freddy's and the spirit went back to the head. But either way, if it was both the suits and the endoskeletons that were possessed, it's no wonder that both the Withered and classic animatronics were haunted. The Withered still had the haunted Endo 02s, while the classics had the haunted suits, all sourced from the same original haunted animatronics that had both. As for why they didn't just leave the designs and endos as they were instead of mismatching them, I have a potential explanation. For the initial swap from the classic designs to the Withereds, I think that might have been a way to deal with the whole thing mentioned in one of the secret FNaF 1 news articles about how Freddy's was threatened with shutdown over sanitation, since not only did the animatronics smell like rotting corpses, but there was blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the costumes. Switching from the original costumes to different, albeit creepier, Withered design concepts that Fazbear had from when they sent them off to Edwin would have been a way to try and deal with the problem. This would mean that the costumes got taken off the animatronics, which would reveal the kids' bodies, but honestly, I don't think that would actually change anything. After all, it doesn't seem like the bodies are there as of FNaF 2 or FNaF 1, so they would have been taken out at some point.
I agree,
and Fazbear Entertainment is far from above covering up deaths. This is the same company that knowingly sent a bunch of technicians to their death in the lead up to Secret of the Mimic, told their employees to go bleed out in the safe room if they got spring-locked, and then sealed off those safe rooms without letting people go in to get their belongings, presumably to hide the dead body there that they didn't want people to see. For those who believe the safe rooms getting sealed wasn't because of William Afton's dead body, maybe they just left the corpses that were in the animatronics back there after they got taken out of the animatronics, and they sealed the room to keep them hidden or something. I don't think that's the case personally, but to each their own. Either way, I would not put it past Fazbear to cover up the fact that they found the bodies of the kids in the animatronics, and taking them out wouldn't make them any less haunted or necessarily get rid of the corpse smell on the endoskeletons themselves. Eventually, FNaF 2 rolls around, and after trying to retrofit the Withereds with new technology, they decide they're ugly and smelly, and just use them for parts instead. Then the FNaF 2 location gets shut down, the toys are scrapped, and the Withereds are brought over to the FNaF 1 location for when Freddy's would reopen on their significantly reduced budget. That smaller budget is what I think factors into the change between FNaF 2 and FNaF 1. The way I see it, at first they just try to fix up the Withereds and use them there. After all, despite the rundown condition of the building in the Follow Me minigames, which could be blamed on how Phone Guy said the old location was left to rot and how most people believe that FNaF 1 was the original Freddy's location, the animatronics in the minigames have buttons like their Withered versions. While this could just be brushed off as a design mistake, I personally don't believe that's the case because it would have been incredibly easy for Scott to not go out of his way to put buttons on animatronics that weren't supposed to have them. As for Classic Freddy and FNaF World having buttons, which is a common piece of counter evidence I've heard, I think that's actually because FNaF World takes place at the time of the Follow Me minigames where Freddy has buttons. Hence why the clock ending involves setting it up, which honestly just tells me that the buttons are a very intentional detail. Because of this and how I think it makes the most sense for the Phone Guy call about sealing the safe room in the game about the guy who is found in a sealed up safe room to be about hiding the guy in the sealed up safe room, and how Phone Guy dies in FNaF 1, I put the Follow Me minigames, including William Afton's destruction of the animatronics, as taking place before FNaF 1. And I gotta say, all of your animatronics being broken into pieces on the floor would be an excellent reason to dust off the other stuff you have in storage so that you can still open. And if not because the animatronics were broken on the floor, maybe the Withereds were already considered too damaged even right after FNaF 2 to be repaired. Either way, why bother paying someone to fix them or try tracking down the guy who made them before disappearing off of the face of the earth for decades after his daughter died, when good old Edwin Murray left a bunch of Endo 01 endoskeletons in his old building that Fazbear took possession of, and the costumes for the classics are still around. Just stick the old classic casings on the Endo 01s and you've got yourself some haunted animatronics to use at your Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Or I may be misinterpreting this entirely. Either way, I think it would make a lot of sense for this to be the case, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out the Alex plushie while you still can at the link in the description. Don't get stabbed and have a nice day.
Okay. I would say, okay, I don't agree with this theory, but I think it's actually not, like, that far off from what I believe anyway, so it's, like, it's a pretty good theory. I actually think it kind of makes sense, but I personally don't think that the shells are, like, primarily possessed. I think it's mostly just, like, they have, like, residual agony because the endoskeletons are attached to them, right? So I don't think it's, like, the souls are in there. I think it's just like their spiritual energy is part of it because they're connected, right? But overall, I do think the idea is pretty good. It makes sense. It does mostly works with my idea, but I do think that the Endo 01s are the ones at the first Friday. She's saying that the Endo 2s are in the classics, and I think the Endo 1s are in the Wizards. So we kind of have like exact opposite beliefs on like the classic animatronics, but at the first Freddy's, to be clear. But yeah, like I've said, I am kind of opening up more towards the classics being the animatronics at the first Freddy's, but now that I've watched these couple videos, I've recorded my Wizards video, but I'm gonna add a little bit more in, like, now that I've seen these videos, so that I can talk a little bit about the ideas presented in them, or like slight corrections and stuff here and there. But overall, these were all pretty good theories. I actually enjoyed them. But yeah, I'm gonna end the stream now. I think my next stream will be what, Wednesday? I think Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday will probably be my next theory. Not next theory. My next stream, and that'll be security breach. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you want to. Stay tuned for my FNaF 4 theory, which is literally coming out in about 2.5 hours. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be out soon. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream or whatever the next thing you see by me is. So yeah, see you guys.